UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. It's 2 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are, as you well know, the home of common sense. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connection device, I very much appreciate you joining me today. We have a very, very busy show for you today. We've just come fresh from the Keir Starmer press conference in Downing Street, at which he said, I've got to be honest, as far as I can tell, absolutely nothing. It was certainly no Hugh Grant in Love Actually moment. Oh, Mr. President, you know, he's stand firm. But apparently we're all standing together, and he is very much a man who's talking about pulling the country together and insists that this is an active government. I don't even know what any of those words meant, but I'm sure when they read them in a little management business book, they sounded really, really good. Anyway, I want to ask your thoughts about Donald Trump's threatening that tariff war on Britain and Europe if they don't back his plan to seize Greenland. What should Keir Starmer do in response? I want to know your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. As you know, text costs £1, standard network rate message. Of course, posts on X are free. I want to hear your thoughts on that. Also, all your thoughts on what my next guest has to say, because the show's a little bit topsy-turvy this morning, because I'm delighted to welcome to the studio, first time I'm welcoming him as a Reform UK MP for Newark, Mr. Robert Jenrick. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Happy Monday morning.
And to you too.
Just first of all, you know, hard question. What's it like in Reform? Are you all happy there?
Well, it was a hell of a week, but I'm very pleased that I made this decision. Look, I'm excited to be part of what I believe is a team of people who can set out to change the country.
Yeah.
And that's what we need right now. The country is a mess. We need change.
I mean, you do. I think we safely say we do need change. I suppose I need to get, first of all, your response to what Keir Starmer has just been saying. Such as he said anything, what should the UK response be to Donald Trump threatening tariffs against his neighbours?
Well, I'm none the wiser what the Prime Minister's strategy is, having to listen to a bit of his press conference today. What Trump has done is obviously wrong. You know, it cannot be that the US can use bully boy tactics to take control of Greenland. He has a point that there is an incredibly important strategic question about Greenland, the Arctic, what's called the High North, and we can't allow our adversaries like China and Russia to get a foothold there now and in the decades ahead. But it's got to be resolved diplomatically, hasn't it? And so you've got to work with allies, whether that's putting more defence equipment, armed forces personnel there from the US, whether it's through NATO. There needs to be found a solution, but hopefully this can be done in a diplomatic way.
Should he be threatening, along with the Europeans, Macron, by all accounts, threatening this tariff response?
Look, I don't think getting into a trade war helps anyone, but it definitely doesn't. Trump was wrong.
Well, that's what Keir Starmer said. You agree with Keir Starmer?
Trump was wrong to do that. I don't think it's helpful for us to respond in a sort of tit-for-tat way. You've now got to get around the table and try and dial this down and come up with a sensible diplomatic solution. But part of that is appreciating what the US is saying here, which is that this part of the world is strategically very important. There is a serious threat, not just to the US, but to our own interests if you find China and Russia getting a foothold there. And so we've got to find a solution to that, but it's obviously a diplomatic one, not one which involves the US taking over this against the will of the people.
Is this a clear message to the Europeans, including Britain, not the EU, the Europeans, that they really should have been spending a heck of a lot more on defence? Because actually, them suggesting, oh, we'll defend Greenland, or indeed we can take on Donald Trump.
Joke, isn't it? Because
you and whose army?
Exactly. Look, Europe, including the UK, is militarily weak. We have allowed our armed forces to be enfeebled. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the people. All European countries, for most of our adult lifetimes, have underfunded their armed forces under this naive belief that there was some kind of peace dividend. The US, perfectly understandably, say, well, why should we be the guarantors of your security? Why should American taxpayers be paying for what German and UK and French taxpayers could be doing? So we've got to get defence spending up, got to invest in our armed forces.
There's a lot of talk, 2.3, do we get it up to 2.5, do we get 3% of the GDP at some point in, the 2030s?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are different things you can say, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, 3%. It's got to be somewhere in that realm. But the most important thing is for us to actually have a domestic defence industry so that we are, creating jobs here in the UK, spending this money wisely, which, in honesty, the Ministry of Defence has not done in recent years, and be very clear-eyed about what our interests actually are.
Question. Do you know much about this? Because one of the things that Kemi Badenoch said in, your little tit for tat exchange that you had last week was that you had no interest in foreign affairs, you had no knowledge about foreign affairs.
No, I am not going to start trading insults.
You already did on Thursday.
I didn't actually. She's lashing out.
Not at her, but
she's lashing out. She's obviously a bit upset. She clearly doesn't like me very much. But
did she like you before Thursday?
From what she has said since Thursday, I think the answer is no. But I'm not gonna, to follow suit on that. The point that I was making on Thursday was that I believe that Britain is broken, that the people that I represent are finding life very tough at the moment. And it's only if you're willing to say that, to appreciate that the country's in a challenging time, that you have any ability to start coming up with how you're going to fix it. And what I would say about Kemi is Kemi responded on Thursday, as well as all of the, the silly personal insults. She responded by saying Britain is not broken. That is the fundamental disagreement between us, between Reform and the Conservative Party, frankly, the big dividing line in British politics. Do you think the country's in a mess? Not broken beyond repair. We can fix this, we can turn the country around, but do you think people's lives are tough, that the country is in a hole and we need to do something radical to fix it? Or do you think, everything's all right, we'll muddle through, same old technocratic solutions, we'll manage decline? Well, I know which side of that divide I'm on.
And to be fair to you, you have been saying that for quite a long time, not just off the record, on the record. You've been saying that in interviews, and we understand you've been saying that at the Tory away days and the like. You talked about representing your constituency in Newark. You represent them as a Tory MP until Thursday. They voted you in as a Tory MP. Why do you think it's acceptable for you to continue without having a by-election? I mean, it may well be, one of the reasons you defected was actually your constituents would prefer you to be a Reform MP. They did pretty well at the last election, in 2024. You were the only Tory in your entire region to be re-elected, when Reform did very well there. But, I mean, they elected a Tory MP. You're now a sitting Reform MP. We are years away from a general election. Why on earth do you think it's right to not hold a by-election?
Well, in our system, you do elect individuals. I appreciate that you're under a party banner and many, perhaps most people, are drawn towards the party rather than the individual. I do believe that in Newark, a part of the reason why I was elected at the last election against all of the polls, as you say, the only Conservative elect in the whole of that part of the country, was because I'd taken some independent-minded stances. I resigned from the last Conservative government because I disagreed with Rishi Sunak's immigration policies. People on the doorstep were saying to me, I'm voting for you rather than the party colour, or, I'm not going to vote Reform because I think you share the same values and principles of Reform. So I think they know what they get with me. I'm going to continue to represent them, obviously with vim and vigour, in the months and years ahead, fighting on local issues, holding Labour to account, and hopefully continue to represent them for a very long time to come. OK, let's talk about all these defections. We've got Andrew Rossendale yesterday. Great news.
MP. He's a shadow minister. I mean, pretty much all Tory MPs are shadow ministers because there aren't that many of them. So to fill them, let's face it.
Well, not all.
Now, Reform have got 7 MPs now, 40% increase in just a week. Nadeem Zahawi came on Monday, you, and then Andrew Rossendale, 3 defections in a week. This 7th of May deadline, this is the date of the local elections, the elections in Scotland and in Wales, and at that press conference with you last Thursday, Nigel Farage was very clear. This is it. This is the deadline. You can't wait until the results, and if they're bad, come and jump ship. This is it. Was that a requirement? Was that part of the deal that, say, Zia Youssef, who has said he doesn't want more Tories joining, was that part of the deal that he agreed with Nigel Farage in return for welcoming you? And I believe he attended a dinner with you that Thursday night. So it's all lovely-dovey now. But the deal is, this is where it ends.
Well, what Nigel said is that if you share the values of reform, strong borders, strong defence, trying to get the economy going again by actually raising living standards, no more net zero nonsense, which is impoverishing people, deindustrialising the country, all the issues that we've been campaigning on. Basically, if you think the country's broken and you want to set out to fix it, join reform. But if you're in another political party, you've got to do it soon. Be part of it now when it's really getting going. And so he set a deadline saying, come to us before the May local elections and you'll get a good hearing. If you want to come much later on, perhaps when it becomes, let's hope, increasingly clear that reform is on course to be the next government, then you're not going to have the welcome that you would have right now. I think that's perfectly justifiable. Reform is going to welcome people with experience as long as they share the values of reform, but it also wants to set out to attract, I think, which is actually more important, people who are not associated with Conservative or Labour, people from other walks of life.
Well, they're expecting a Labour defection
people,
this week.
Teachers, doctors, people who have been spurned by the two old political parties and who can do something positive to create something new and exciting.
OK, let's go back to a little recent history, and I want to talk about the future as well. We've got a good bit of time, so let's go over some of these things. So, and especially with the reaction we had from our audience on Thursday when the breaking news happened at 11 o'clock. I mean, to be fair, we found out about it, I think, only 6 minutes after you did, when you were told by the chief whip, not even by Kemi Badenoch herself, that you were out. Yeah, let's face it, you were bounced into that decision on Thursday. That press conference wasn't supposed to be with you.
Well, to explain to your viewers, I had resolved to do this. Really over the Christmas period.
And where were you planning to announce?
It would have been a few days later, so it really made no difference to me whether it was Thursday or this morning. The point was, over a long period of time, I'd come to this conclusion. It's not something you do lightly. I probably agonised over it for too long, because you think about your constituents, the very kind and decent members that you have in the constituency who've helped you, plus all my friends in Parliament, because there are good people in the Conservative Party, don't get me wrong. So it was a very difficult decision for me. I took time to think about it, really resolved over Christmas, and then some events that happened later, like going to this away day where we were told the Tory line is that Britain is not broken. I fundamentally disagree with that. I think the country is a mess.
Do you think you need to recognise that to actually understand how serious the issues are that need to be fixed?
You do. Look, the problem for the Tory party is it's encumbered by its record. It contributed to the mess that the country is in today, made some disastrous decisions. And the only way it can regain people's trust is by being painfully honest about the mistakes that it made, accepting those, internalising that, and then setting out to be very different. That is the argument that I made after the general election, when I stood for leader of the party, and publicly and privately.
And is it your view that even if they paid lip service to that, they won't actually do anything about it? Because look, as Nigel Farage said, never trust a Tory. They'll always let you down. They will always betray you. I don't know whether he includes you in that or not. But I think
Nigel would accept that there's a mix of people. The problem with the Tory party is that a third of the Tory party basically should be in the Lib Dems. Another big chunk don't really care one way or another, are not waking up every morning driven by a deep desire to change the country, not angry at the state of the country. There is a group of very good Conservative MPs and lots of members in the country who exactly share all of the things that reform stand for, and I suspect many of those people would be happier in reform, and Nigel may be willing to welcome them into reform. But the party overall, particularly in Westminster, is unrepentant for the mistakes it's made, and it will never be able to move on. I think this is why it is going to die as a political organisation, because it can't accept that, and it's got the same people at the helm holding on to the sort of past glories as they see them. I mean, I'll give you an example. Over Christmas, and this was one of the things that weighed on my mind, I woke up one morning to see Starmer was celebrating this extremist El Fattah coming into the country. Like most people, I was disgusted. And
just remind people who are not.
He was this Egyptian extremist who'd said anti-British, anti-white, anti-Semitic comments, that the police should be killed down and should be burnt down.
It wasn't nuanced, was it?
A thoroughly nasty piece of work, and he was being brought into the country.
Well, no, the Foreign Office had campaigned for his release. Apparently as a top priority.
Exactly,
for some reason.
It was the top priority of British foreign policy.
He'd obtained for some reason British nationality.
Forget illegal immigration or national security. Well, that's my point, Julia. I then, like lots of other people, took to social media, took to the media saying, deport this man, cancel his citizenship, I never want to see him walking the streets of our country. Imagine my surprise when I then hear there are complaints about me from the top of the Tory party that I had been doing something that drew attention to the fact that it was the Tory government that gave him citizenship, and that our foreign secretaries and prime ministers had been using their precious time with the leader of Egypt to campaign for this rather than all the other more important things they could have been doing for the British people. And that just small example shows that if that is your mindset, the Tory party hasn't changed. It can't change. And I don't see why the British public should say, you know what, we don't like Starmer, so we'll hand you the keys back of the car you've just crashed, which you're in denial that you did it, and hope that they're going to have a different outcome this time. My view is that is a fantasy.
Okay.
I was naive to believe that that was going to happen. What we should do now is concentrate on rallying behind something new and fresh in Nigel and the Reform Party.
Okay. And that's a good, fair explanation of what's happened. When did you have your Damascene conversion? Because you were a Remainer. You were a Sunak loyalist. You were seen as
I resigned from Rishi Sunak's government. So I don't think Rishi Sunak would describe me as
you were put
a loyalist,
into the Home
Julia.
Office originally.
He was wrong, wasn't he? He underestimated
But
me.
was it what you saw in the Home Office? Was it the incompetence?
I think it goes back. Look, it goes back further than that. At the end of the day, my politics is rooted in where I grew up in the West Midlands, in a kind of normal family.
Can I just say this? I think a lot of people think, with all due respect, you're a little bit of a posh Tory boy, but you've criticised the Tories for being the posh boy. But you're not, are you?
No, I'm not going to pretend I grew up in,
You're not a toolmaker's son.
Oliver Twist. But I grew up in a very normal family. My dad was a gas fitter who started a small business. My mum was a secretary. We grew up just outside Wolverhampton. It was a normal family. It wasn't a Tory family. My dad didn't vote Conservative till, in fact, I stood for Parliament, and he did it, I think, probably to support me. But my politics are rooted in places like that, the small town in North Nottinghamshire that I represent. You're right to say, though, that I was absolutely aghast by what I saw in the Home Office, and maybe that radicalised me. I'm willing to accept that, but a lot of people in the country have been on the same journey. They thought the country was all right. Maybe the old answers would be enough, and then over time have come to see mass migration, poor living standards, broken public services. The state doesn't seem to be able to do anything at the moment. They're taxed to the hilt. They believe the country is in a mess and that it's going to take a radical reforming government, not more of the same, to turn it around. That is the journey that I've been on, but it's a journey I share with my constituents and most people, I think, in the country.
OK. We're going to take a very quick break right now, and then we want to come back, and then I want to talk more about the future, about what it is you think that Nigel Farage and Reform can actually do to turn around, to what is broken, what needs to be fixed, what the priorities are. We'll talk more about all of that. Stay tuned. More from Robert Jenrick. I'd love to hear your response to what he has to say as well. A lot of you had lots to say last Thursday. In fact, I would say mostly very positive about Robert Jenrick going to Reform. But I'd love to hear your thoughts either way. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:23 is the time. I'd like to say Robert Jenrick, the new MP for Reform UK, standing for Warwick, representing Warwick, is still with me in the studio. Nice to actually get some proper time with you to get some real depth. Thank you very much again for joining us. Do get in touch and tell us know what your thoughts are on what he has to say. Don't forget also get in touch about Donald Trump's threat of tariffs on Britain and Europe if they don't back his plan to seize Greenland. Well, they're not going to back his plan to seize Greenland. So what should Keir Starmer do in response? He did a press conference about an hour ago. Can't make head nor tail of what he actually said he was going to do other than absolutely nothing. But your thoughts on that always welcome too. 0344 499 1000. Robert Jenrick, look, so many of the interviews you've done since you left and the questions at the press conference last Thursday since you joined Reform have been about, whether are you trustworthy and disloyalty and treachery and all of that. We covered a lot of that really and why you've moved. I want to talk about what happens next, okay? Because there is a lot of expectation that Reform will form the next government. But there's also, as you know, a week's a long time in politics, a few years certainly is a very long time. Goodness knows what could happen in the next few years. Do you think your move now makes it more or less likely that there will be some move to unite the right, whether before the next election or some sort of pact or coalition after the next election, if there isn't an outright majority for either party?
Yes.
More likely.
But not a pact. There's not going to be a pact.
That would damage both parties.
There's not going to be a pact. And why? Because the people who felt the last Conservative government failed, who are angry and frustrated about what happened on immigration and living standards and you name it, they don't want Reform, which is promising change, to be in bed with the Conservative Party that hasn't learnt its lesson, is still, staffed with the same people who made all of those mistakes. So that is not going to happen. This is uniting the right. What's happened in the last week? The fact that those Conservative MPs who share the values and principles of Reform, who do understand and are willing to
who can count,
be open about what happened, have come together and are backing Nigel and Reform now. So my message to anyone who voted Conservative in the past, and there are obviously millions of decent patriotic Brits who did, and have supported the party, sometimes through gritted teeth at elections because they didn't think that things were going in the right direction, is if you want to get rid of Starmer, if you want to fix the country, then put party loyalty to one side, as I have, and do what's right for the country by backing Reform.
All right. Now, you previously said to Nigel Farage he couldn't run a five-a-side team.
That was when he lost some of his... He only had 5 MPs and he lost some.
And he said, OK, we'll see how long that lasts. And you wouldn't want him running your local school, etc., etc. However, look, you've been in government. You saw how hard it was to get anything done. And again, the big issue, a lot of voters who voted for Tory and voted certainly for Boris Johnson in 2019 was he was going to get Brexit done. And then it's not that the Tories didn't do what they said they'd do. They literally did the opposite.
Exactly.
They did the opposite in terms of immigration and lots of other things as well. Having been in government, how big is the challenge that awaits a Reform government, which is largely going to be formed by people who haven't been in government before? Not that that's shown much competence, but in terms of dealing with civil servants, dealing with human rights lawyers, dealing with the House of Lords challenges, dealing with all the quangers. How big a challenge is it and what are the priorities?
It's a huge challenge. That's why it's important to build a very strong team. And you do need some people with experience as well as people who are fresh and not associated with the recent past. You've got to use this time wisely in opposition to create the most comprehensive, detailed, serious plan. Reform isn't going to shoot from the hip. It's not going to have policies made on the back of a fag packet.
That's what's happened so far, though. With all due respect to the party,
no,
that is exactly what's happened.
I don't agree with that, Julia. If you look at the deportation plan that ZUS has set out last year, I thought that was a very...
The last manifesto has been complete...
That was a very credible plan.
Nigel Farage said that wasn't even a proper manifesto. He doesn't stand by it. He doesn't even stand by what he said a year and a bit ago.
Before he chose to come back to politics. But on the economy, it's very important that Reform are clear, and we will be, that we stand for fiscal responsibility, that we're going to reduce the size of the state through carefully looking at where money is being wasted today. We're not going to be a party of welfareism and helping scroungers. We're going to make sure that work always pays, that you don't get benefits for doing nothing, and we bring that bill down by getting people back into the workplace, and that we can be trusted as a party to protect your mortgage, your pension, your small business, the British economy. And that is going to be a big piece of work in the months and years ahead. I understand there's healthy scepticism because it's a new or relatively new political party, but I'm certain we can do that. And certainly compared to the other parties where you trust Rachel Reeves to run the economy after everything that's happened, or the Tory party
not sure
after
even Keir Starmer
the mini
trusts
budget
Rachel Reeves.
and all the disasters that happened under the
But a
Tories.
lot of that is predicated, just by scrapping net zero and tackling welfare, getting welfare levels, spending down to 2019 levels, frees up tens and tens and tens of billions of pounds. There's no question about that. But if you want to get people back to work, that's dependent on growth. There need to be jobs for people to do. How are you going to kickstart economic growth after a few more years of this government?
We were going to be saying more in the coming months, but you can already see where we stand on this. Getting rid of crazy net zero policies, which is impoverishing people and on the economy, is making us uncompetitive. Our energy bills in this country are 4 or 5 times higher than the United States. That's why there's no steel industry. The car industry is dying. Chemicals, glass, ceramics, they're all being lost at the moment. Reform will go for a simple energy policy, which is about having cheap and reliable energy for business and for homes. We're going to ensure that we do the welfare reforms that are necessary to get people back into the workplace.
How ruthless are you prepared to be?
We're going to have to be very, very tough on that, because at the same time, we're going to be ending this era of mass migration where low-wage, low-skilled migrants have come into the country and businesses have been able to rely on this steady stream of people. So if you're the kind of people that I represent in Newark, where thousands work in distribution centres and food processing factories, they know that their wages have been suppressed because people have come in over 20 years now, since Blair started this in the late 90s, from overseas. That's going to come to an end. But to replace that, we're going to have to do serious welfare reforms that get British people back into the workplace. So that will be a big reform. We want to get the country building again, because at the moment there's no homes being built. The number of housing starts has fallen terribly. You can't build roads, railways, data centres, factories, you name it. So there's got to be sensible deregulation to ensure that we get the country going again.
That takes time, though. All of that takes time. Even Keir Starmer, who came into government with a massive majority.
But he had no plan.
He definitely had no plan. But he did think, I've got the civil servants on my side. And even he says, you pull a lever. Tony Blair complained about this 20 years ago. You pull a lever and nothing actually happens. Taking on the blob is going to take probably a couple of years. Then you've only got max 5 years in office.
It's a huge... we don't underestimate the scale of the challenge. That's the point of reform, that reform is a different party to the old ones who just thought you can muddle along with the old system, that your boiler's broken, but you just get somebody to patch it up rather than rip out the boiler, change the whole system, try and do something more radical. That is what we stand for. I think that's what meets the scale of the challenge today, because to me, it feels like the country is in a moment commensurate with the late 1970s, where the ideas, the policies that have shaped us for decades have been proven to fail. They're making people poorer. It's got to change fundamentally. But we as a party have to use the years ahead very wisely to have a serious and credible plan, miles better than this government, miles better than whatever the Tory party are doing as well. It is a low bar.
Okay.
That's what the British public
What
deserve.
job would you most like, other than Prime Minister, of course?
Honestly, I have just joined Reform, having asked for nothing, and
so all those ambitions just out the window.
I am ambitious, and I don't resile from that. Most people in the country are ambitious.
Most MPs want to be Prime Minister.
I want to be part of a team which is ambitious to fix the country, and that is what is exciting about Reform. That's what it's setting out to do, and it's a young party. Everything is new. It's a real opportunity to get stuck in, and so I'm here to support Nigel and the team around him.
And just finally, a lot of people have fallen out with Nigel Farage over the years. I've known him many, many, many years.
Have you fallen out with him?
No, well, no. Actually, no. We've fallen out over a couple of topics of politics. No, I've known him for many years. I consider him a friend. Went to his 60th birthday party and the like. But a lot of people do fall out with him. Do you think that you will be able to get on with him, and will you be able to cope with the party, which is basically, it's not a one-man band anymore, but what Nigel Farage says is what the policy is, full stop. Are you prepared for that?
Well, you're right. Reform has a strong leader, so it's not like the Labour Party or the Tory Party, where there's debates about, this person's failing, should they be given the boot. There's a strong leader who has shaped the party, and quite rightly, you've got to get behind him and support him everywhere you can. And I join Reform knowing that that's the deal. My interactions with Nigel so far have been extremely positive. I'd say he's extremely hard-working. He is very serious about the opportunity ahead to try and fix the country. And what I admire about him, we don't agree on everything, don't get me wrong, what I admire about him is he's been consistent on the big issues facing the country. When he was talking about immigration and the small boats, people laughed at him at one stage.
Including people like you.
Well, I don't know about that, actually, because for years people tell me to stop banging on about immigration. I mean, I've been talking about it a lot, but you're right, he came to it earlier than me. I mean, when I was a teenager, he was warning about what Tony Blair was doing when he opened the floodgates for mass migration. And consistency in a leader, and particularly a prime minister, is incredibly important. One of the problems with our recent prime ministers of all parties is that they didn't know what they were doing, they didn't know why they were doing it, other than wanting the office for its own sake. And that is not Nigel. He has very clear principles, he's stood by them for decades, and that is the kind of person that you want in a time of crisis for the country. OK,
Robert Jenrick, pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. I think lots of questions answered there. Love to hear your thoughts. You're probably shouting at me right now, going, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you ask that? There's a lot of questions being asked of him over the weekend. But Reform UK MP Robert Jenrick, thank you very much. Give us a call, let us know your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts on Donald Trump's threatening that tariff war, and what should Keir Starmer's response be over Greenland? Do you just not care about Greenland? Are we going to allow ourselves to be bullied? This is British businesses that are going to be affected by these tariffs. US, of course, being our single biggest export market. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. Well, what do you make of that interview with Robert Jenrick? Look, there are 20,000 questions you could ask. A lot of them, as I say, asked at the press conference last Thursday, every interview over the weekend. I wanted to get to quite a bit of where we are going forward, because I know a hell of a lot of you really care about this future of this country. And my God, we can't do any worse, can we, than the Prime Minister we've got at the moment. But joining me to have a bit of a chat right now, I'm delighted to say it's Benjamin Butterworth, who's a journalist and broadcaster, joins us regularly. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Two things I've tasked you with having a look at this morning. First of all, Keir Starmer's press conference. Sorry. Back in the room. In which he said, genuinely, I'm sitting there with my shorthand, writing away, did my journalism course, shorthand, no. What has he actually said? And then an interview with Robert Jenrick. First of all, your reaction to what Robert Jenrick had to say, and to that defection.
Well, the bit I most enjoyed was when you said, what job do you want? And there was a notable pause, there was a notable silence, and then he kind of, the only point where he sort of slightly flailed when he was asked if his ambition had gone out of the window. And I just think that that is the most telling part. I think this is only the start of a story that I suspect is going to become quite a soap opera, because what do we know about Robert Jenrick? He's extremely ambitious. He said that on the record. He tried to be Tory leader, he failed, he was dishonest and disloyal to the people that got him the job of an MP in the first place in the Tories. Yep. And what do we know about Farage? it is a one-man band if he wants it to be. He doesn't like rival leaders. He doesn't like people that dominate the airwaves against him. And so I just wonder whether this is certainly a coup right now. I would come back in 12 months and see whether it's quite so calm.
Yes, it's very. I do wonder, particularly also whether Zia Yusuf, who was party chairman, had resigned over previous issues. That Zia Yusuf basically put his foot down and basically said, "Right, we've got to have a deadline. We can't just have another Tory turning up here constantly. We need to have a deadline." And that Nigel Farage agreed to the 7th of May deadline. That's the last date you can come. My thing is, though, if you've got some other really senior figure, whether it's Tory or anybody else, wanting to join the party, who was credible, who was, and I would say someone like, if you're David Davises or you're Ian Duncan Smiths, your Lord Frosts, people like that, who've got absolute credibility on key issues like Brexit, if they wanted to come over after 7th of May, do you seriously think that Nigel Farage would go, no, thank you?
No, I don't. But I think what they're trying to do with this May deadline is to try and establish themselves as the dominant right-wing party, to try and make that indisputable, and also presumably to make it the place where all the money goes by saying we're the primary force, not the Tories. And so I think that's why they're trying to get the funnel of people over right now to establish that. Also, of course, 2 more defections and they'll be bigger than the SNP in Westminster.
I mean, this is the extraordinary thing, is it, how things change, isn't it? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get you, of course, I promise, very soon. Let's also talk about what Keir Starmer had to say. He's supposed to be off on a trip today, campaigning elections, or whatever he was doing. I mean, who cares? I mean, genuinely, it's painful. It's absolutely painful. But he decided to make a statement at number 10 it was actually, I think, number 9, wasn't he? At that wood-panelled room. And he made a statement, and I was watching it, and eventually, of course, talk sort of moved away from it, and when there were questions and things. But he doesn't answer questions, and B, as far as I can tell, he really didn't say anything. It was certainly not a Hugh Grant moment in Love Actually, standing up to the American president, talk about mature relationships and how these relationships matter. They deliver concrete benefits. Our values built slowly over time. We are resolute in protecting those values. Principles cannot be set aside. Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. That right is fundamental. Talking about how geopolitics affects people at home, because people think, it's something happening over there. Tariffs from the US on UK goods being exported will impact jobs here, full stop. It will. He talked about active government, steady at home, engaged abroad, protect the people we serve, and then had a go at people who do soundbites, saying we prefer solutions to soundbites. I thought that was a bit of soundbite, personally.
I feel the hand of history on my shoulder.
Yes, the finger of fudge, as Tony Blair had. That's a Good Friday agreement. I mean, he talked for about, it felt like 8 hours. It's probably only a matter of minutes. I couldn't work out what he had actually said that he hadn't already said, which is, of course, Greenland's future is up to the people of Greenland. He hasn't threatened anything. When he was asked questions, he wasn't saying. He was talking about dialogue rather than tariffs. Should he have gone stronger, or is he doing the right thing, just trying to talk Donald Trump down? Because apparently they're all going to be in Davos this week at the at the big sort of billionaire fest in Davos, at the World Economic Forum. Do you think he was right to sort of say nothing?
I mean, the problem he has, which, to be fair, anybody in his job would have right now, is that Donald Trump doesn't really listen to anyone else. He doesn't appear to do diplomacy, certainly not in the way people normally do. This clearly isn't in Europe's interests or Britain's interests to behave this way towards Greenland, at least not in this nature. And yet we need to be close to the US. And so I do, I have some sympathy with the position. I think what he has to do is reflect the anger that people will feel. You talk about the jobs. £10 billion in manufacturing of cars would be really badly affected by this. So there's a very real vulnerability.
There already are more tariffs than there were before Trump came in, but they are lower than the EU has. Yeah.
But the other part that I thought was interesting was that he was asked, do you believe the US president's threat to take military action in Greenland? And he said no. Now, I don't know if that was in the script before he took to the press conference, but saying you don't believe the US president's threat, I think, does run a risk that if Mr. Trump notices what's been said,
that'll urge him on. Well, the thing is, Mark Rutte is the NATO General Secretary. He seems to be the Trump whisperer when it comes to these issues, and they usually try and sort of.
Didn't he call him Daddy?
Yes. But I don't think he called him. To be fair, it made sense at the time. I did get get that. But then one of the questions was interesting, did Donald Trump actually misinterpret the EU and the UK sending some military? I think we sent one bloke and his ski shoes, for goodness sake. But, we the only person we had left in the army, but sent them over to protect Greenland. The idea of that, which was that Donald Trump was saying Greenland's not defended from Russia or China and they need to be defended. And so Europe did so. That Donald Trump has interpreted that as you're trying to defend Greenland from me. And of course, the reality is we can't defend Greenland from the US. Isn't this a bit of a wake-up call that actually the EU, the UK and Europe generally doesn't really have the wherewithal to protect our territories?
Well, on the troops, Germany sent some soldiers there and they've already flown back to Germany in the last 24 hours, so that didn't last long. I think actually there is a really...
Sort of thing the French would do.
Give up, yeah.
Little white flag.
There is a really valid point at the centre of this. I think Donald Trump going against NATO allies is a pretty dangerous way to do it. But I was listening to the US journalist Hadley Gamble, who interviewed Vladimir Putin in 2021. She spent 4.5 hours with him. And she was saying that she asked him about some missiles that they have, and she said, "Oh, can I go and visit them, Mr. Putin?" And he said, "Well, no, because they're in submarines in the Arctic." Yeah. And so that demonstrates that this is a serious problem that, frankly, we certainly haven't been talking about. And the conviction...
We would have known that, though.
But the accusation that we weren't doing enough may well hold quite a lot of weight. And so I just wonder, and you sort of have to be optimistic about this, is Donald Trump doing the game that he's played quite a lot in the last 18 months, which is to put these big threats, to put the tariffs on, to make a massive media storm, to put every politician in Europe in an awkward position, and then before the 1st of February, when these tariffs would come in, we'll have said, OK, well, we'll give you all these troops and we'll give you all these money, and Denmark will say to the US, OK, well, you can, have this much better arrangement than you already have, and that will be where it ends. It just seems extremely unlikely, and Republicans are saying this, let alone lefties like me, that Donald Trump will be serious about military action against a NATO ally.
There's a lot of talk that actually his own senior military would all, resign en masse if this were the case, attacking a fellow NATO territory. It's absolutely fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Again, a lot of people will be saying, and I think vaguely something Keir Starmer did make a point of, that, these things are just, they're over there. People might go, oh, Israel's not my problem, Iran's not my problem, Greenland's not my problem, Ukraine's not my problem. Yeah, well, when your heating bills went up, you remember when the economy was trashed? Yeah, that was Ukraine. Yeah, these things have a funny way of becoming our problem. Iran, those terror attacks, they're all funded by the Iranians. Greenland is a NATO ally. If we expect to be protected by our NATO allies, we need to protect our NATO allies. We're maybe caught in this battle between the US and Europe. Do I give two hoots whether the Danes or the Americans have Greenland? No. We talk about the rule of law. Is there a rule of law? It's basically the rule of might, is it not? Has it not always been that way? Give us your thoughts. Love to hear you have your say. 0344 499 1000. And, of course, your thoughts on Robert Jenrick as well. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. And you mentioned the Republicans there, Benjamin. We're going to be talking to the Chairman of Republicans Overseas, Greg Swenson, to see what he makes of what Donald Trump is threatening. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:48 is the time. This is Talk. I am the home of common sense, and this is Julia Hartley-Brewer. Words to that effect. Who knows? I'm all in a bit of a doodah after these extraordinary threats from Donald Trump overnight. His post on Truth social site saying NATO has been telling Denmark for 20 years that you have to get the Russian threat away from Greenland. Unfortunately, Denmark has been unable to do anything about it. Now it is time, and it will be done. He said in his social media post. He said Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. A lot of capital letters involved in that as well. Well, let's talk about this with Greg Swenson. He's the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. A very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia.
Are these the ravings of a madman?
So, no, I don't think so. It's typical President Trump. He does something provocative. Everybody freaks out. And then, a week later, maybe it's a day later, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month later, everything settles down and the outcome is what's important. And I think the president, knows what the outcome should be.
Does he? What do you think the outcome should be? What does he know? What does he want the outcome to be?
Well, I can't promise that I can't read his mind, but I think, I can guess that he wants the U.S. to control Greenland. Now, it doesn't mean...
What does that mean?
It doesn't mean we have to own it. It doesn't mean we have to, make it a colony or a territory, but, some sort of... there's this compact of free association, for example, the COFA that we have with the Marshall Islands and other small, territories that the U.S. controls. And so, it's what's important is the defense and security of Greenland.
But
yes,
hold on a minute. The defence and security of Greenland can be sorted out anyway. There's a treaty from, 1941? During the war, America can have as many military bases on Greenland as it wants. And until a few years back, it did have plenty of military bases. It chose to remove them. There's no issue there. It doesn't have to control Greenland to do that.
There was some negotiations for that. I think when the U.S. bought the Danish Virgin Islands from Denmark, they agreed to recognize that Denmark controlled Greenland. They brought the number of military bases down to 1. They can add to those, they can add bases, but they have to get permission from both Greenland and Denmark. And that's just not enough control for the US.
That's not what military figures have told me. They don't need to get that permission. They could do it. And I'm pretty sure, by the way, they would agree to that. At the end of the day, look, this is very different. I'm not one of the people clutching their pearls over Venezuela and the arrest of a narco trafficker, murderer, unelected figure in Maduro. My view is, the rule of law, in international law, reality is it's the rule of might, and it always has been, and that is how things go. However, we are talking about a threat to a NATO ally, to a democratically run country that is a territory of a NATO ally. An ally, by the way, in Denmark that fought, alongside America, defending them after the 9/11 attacks. Now, I'm sorry, but this is a very different affair. This isn't undermining the rule of law. This is undermining the Western alliance. The only people cheering about this right now are Russia and China.
I disagree. I think they're the ones that have the most to lose because they have access to Greenland. Who's going to defend it? It's the U.S., right? So we are defending Greenland. We have been, we've been defending Greenland and Denmark and the rest of Europe for 80 years now. So do we continue doing that for free? I'm not sure.
Well, wait a minute. But you're defending Greenland because you need to defend Greenland because any Russian missiles coming from Moscow will come over Greenland to America. So it's in America's interest to defend Greenland.
Absolutely, and that's part of it. And I think that we're doing it on behalf of our own security, but also on behalf of European security and NATO security. So we've been providing that for free, while French get 6 weeks of holiday and the British get free healthcare. So I think there's a point where we have to do this.
Point.
Yeah, it has to be a fair trade. And I think the fair trade is we want those critical minerals. And the reason we want them is we are dependent on China right now for critical minerals, for defense and security, for the Pentagon. And that's not sustainable.
I'm told by people who are probably both more expert in Greenland's geography and what is under the rocks there than you and I are, that actually those minerals, they're there, but actually extracting them, given the temperatures, is near on impossible. There's a reason why it's not been done already.
And the other reason is that Greenland has put a moratorium, a permanent ban on uranium development. They've put a temporary ban, or at least they've stopped additional oil and gas leases. So, you have sort of a no nuke country in Greenland, all 70,000 or 57,000 people. But also, I think they get a little bit of that spirit from the Europeans. Now, Denmark, to their credit, punches above their weight for defense and security, given their population, but it's 6 million people. So, look, there's obviously the U.S. is going to be the defender of Greenland. Yes, there's national interest involved. It's not just, we're not doing it just for the greater good. We're doing it to defend ourselves. We need to control that territory for not only for space, for the Arctic, shipping channels, both military and commercial, critical minerals. I mean, the list is long. It's just inevitable that we're going to control it.
But hasn't Donald Trump gone too far this time? We know that there's a meeting in Davos, the World Economic Forum. He's going to be there speaking on Wednesday. No doubt will be slagging everyone off, quite rightly, as usual. But we know that a lot of the leaders, I mean, Starmer's not supposed to be going. I'm sure he'll hastily another U-turn. He goes when no one important goes, and then he's now not going when all the big people are going to be there. So he's probably, almost, I would say, certainly going to be there. But at the end of the day, we're in a situation where he's making all these threats, and it's kind of a you and whose army, undermining the NATO alliance, making tariff threats, which, by the way, will put up prices for American consumers. You've still got a massive big cost of living issue in America as well. This is not supported by the vast number of Republican representatives. We know that the senior figures in the military apparently are going to be resigning en masse if he orders any sort of military raids on Greenland. He's a man on his own on this.
Yeah, no, there won't be any military intervention, but we don't have to do that. I mean, by the way, hypothetically, if we did that, it would take all of 15 minutes to take over Greenland, but that's not going to happen. I mean, this is the president, and you asked if he's gone too far. He always goes too far. That's the way he rolls. So he'll go, come out of the gates, ask for 100% and settle for 50%.
Why isn't he this tough on Putin? Why is he tougher on Greenland and the Danes and the Brits and the French than he is on Vladimir Putin?
In the long term, this is tough on Putin.
How?
Because that's what he's trying to avoid is not next week, not next month, but a war over Greenland, which ultimately will happen when Russia and China get around to it, if they choose to. The president's not happy with Europe buying oil from Russia. So right now, even today, in spite of what's happened over the last 3 years, the Europeans are funding the Russian war in Ukraine by buying the oil. So, the president is going to go to great lengths to fix NATO. He's already done that to a certain degree, to fix Europe. These are our allies. We want them to be strong.
If this is just a negotiation, it's a war of words, bit of tit, bit of tat, should the Europeans respond with, we talk about this sort of, these big tariffs from the EU. Keir Starmer is very much steering away. In his press conference where he said absolutely nothing, steering away from saying that there would be a tariff. What about, and he was asked about this at the press conference, he declined to answer, what about, withdrawing the King's visit to the United States to mark the 250th anniversary of US independence? Would that hurt Donald Trump, because he loves a little bit of rubbing up against the royals, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think he does love that, and I don't think it will happen. And I think that
the trip won't
prime
happen?
Ministers are. No, I don't think that they will cancel the trip. Is what I'm saying. So I think this will all blow over, believe it or not. And the theater, the sort of dramatic responses from the European leaders and huddling up and having an emergency meeting, it's just theater. They absolutely depend on the United States for defense and security. They will toss Greenland. They will. There's no way that they can defend Greenland. So if the U.S. is going to do it, they have to have control of it.
Right now, genuinely, if Vladimir Putin had the wherewithal to invade Poland, to invade the Baltic states, blatantly, openly, tanks rolling in, I suppose the little green men he started off with in Crimea in Ukraine. Do you think that the US would come to the aid of their NATO allies?
Absolutely.
I don't think they would.
No, absolutely they would. And look, I don't think Ukraine would have happened if President Trump was in office. And all of these things happened during Obama and Biden administrations. The Trump has been very aggressive with Putin. He was the first one to call out Putin for killing his own people in 1999. 3 presidents prior to President Trump knew it and decided not to talk about it. He sent Javelin missiles. He put sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Told the Europeans don't build, or the Germans specifically, don't build Nord Stream 2, and they went ahead and did it anyway. So no, the president's very aggressive with Putin. I wish the other presidents were as well.
All right, then. Interesting to hear your thoughts on all this. Greg Swenson, Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Benjamin Butterworth still me. Just very briefly, we'll come on to this more, but are you convinced this is all theatre? It's all going to work out okay?
No, and you hit the nail on the head. At the same time that he's having a war of words with NATO, he's offered Vladimir Putin a spot on the peace board of Gaza. Yeah. He's helping him. I think it's quite disingenuous.
OK, love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well, and your thoughts on Robert Jenrick and that defection. What happens next? Should Nigel Farage continue taking people from the Tories and any other party? Should he take no more? Forget the 7th of May deadline. What should Keir Starmer's response be, other than just being utterly spineless, empty vessel suit as he usually is, be to these Donald Trump threats? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's almost 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connection device, it is great to have your company. Thank you so much for joining me. Lots more going on in the show. If you do miss anything of the show, don't forget you go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. You'll be able to find that full interview with Robert Jennings we did just an hour ago. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about that defection and the defection of the shadow Foreign Minister Andrew Rossendale. He's the third major defection in just a week. We're expecting a Labour figure later on in this week. We're also going to be talking more about what is going on with Greenland and those Donald Trump tariff threats and Keir Starmer's pretty, blamongy response in a press conference this morning. We're also going to look at how police in Britain's first Big Brother town are catching criminals every 34 minutes. That's Croydon in South London. Oh, someone's actually finally worked out how to catch criminals. What a great idea. It's almost like someone should have thought about this before, shouldn't they? Also, very excited, in about an hour's time, you'll have seen at the end of last week, the Darlington nurses won, the latest case of bunch of hard-working women working in the NHS, being asked to change in a changing room with a bloke who calls himself a woman but is nevertheless a bloke, standing in front of them half naked, wanting to watch them undress. They not unreasonably complained about it. Well, they won their case against the NHS Trust, hands down. Very clear message about the Supreme Court ruling, what the Equality Act means. I'm going to be talking to them. Another case, by the way, of that nurse who referred to a trans-identified paedophile who was a criminal who was in the ward she was looking after as Mr. Then was called the N-word, and goodness knows what else, by this horrific man. She could face the sack tomorrow for supposedly misgendering the man who was in her medical care, even though the medical care she was talking about him actually involved his penis. So it might be relevant that he was a mister. Anyway, as you know, these stories are just fantastic in terms of basically just exposing the utter madness of all of this. And I'm so in awe of these women. I'm so excited they're going to be in the studio. So stay tuned for that at midday. Delighted to say, still joining me in the studio is Benjamin Butterworth, journalist and broadcaster. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I've kind of got two questions for you today, really. One is Donald Trump threatening this tariff war in Britain and Europe if they don't back his plan to basically seize Greenland. What should Keir Starmer do in response? I mean, basically, he's criticised Donald Trump and said he shouldn't be. Basically said he shouldn't be making these threats. It's completely wrong. Stands by Greenland and Denmark, but hasn't threatened any tariffs. It's all about dialogue. Hasn't actually said he'll do anything. This was not a Hugh Grant in Love Actually moment at all this morning. Not quite sure what the point of that press conference was, but I feel that way about every Starmer press conference. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you think the response should be. Give us a call, 0244 499 1000. I also want to hear your response to our interview in the last hour with Robert Jennings. He was Shadow Justice Secretary for the Conservatives. He is, as of Thursday evening, a Reform backbench MP. But we talked to him about his decision to move, why he moved over to Reform. Well, he basically got sacked by Kemi Badenoch. He was bounced, but was planning to do it already. And his decision to stick with Nigel Farage, and why he thinks that is the future. And we had a long conversation actually about what the challenges are ahead for anyone in government, at least somebody who's been in government and knows what it's like dealing with, the civil service blob. I'd love to hear your response there. I'd love to, do you trust him? Do you think it was a good move? Do you think it was the right move? Should more Tories follow suit? Or do you, a lot of Reform people say, look, we don't want to be a party of ex-Tories. That's not what this is about. But, people who've been involved in politics are probably going to have been in a political party, won't they? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to take a couple of calls on that before the next break. So do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. First up, let's get the thoughts of Benjamin Butterworth on all of that. We're going to come back to the tariffs in the next 20 minutes or so. But what do you make of Robert Jennings' defection to Reform? He was bounced by Kemi Badenoch, wasn't it? Andrew Rossendale has followed. Nadeem Zahawi was before him this time last week. Does this strengthen Reform and weaken the Tories or not? Well,
I think that a lot of the people that have gone over are people who had missed out on what they wanted from the Tory party, and it would be naive to overlook that. Nadeem Zahawi reportedly, quote-unquote, begged for a peerage from the Tories. I'm sure he did. He's the guy that was Chancellor for 2 minutes and then had serious accusations about his tax affairs, and so he's only gone over after he apparently didn't get the prospect of a peerage. Jenrick was trying to be Tory leader and he was trying long after he lost the membership election. By the looks of it, it was not subtle, and so he's gone over. I think Farage might have some problems with him. And then Andrew Rosendale, who I've been speaking to people close to him this morning, and he says that it was Jenrick that persuaded him to go over, that Nigel Farage rang him on Saturday night and said, will you do it?
The big issue there was about the Chigossians being...
Yeah.
I mean, I get this. It's an interesting issue to change parties over, I have to say.
Yes, although Andrew Rosendale has a long history of the Commonwealth and the British Overseas Territories, that's the phrase I'm looking for, being one of his big political decisions. So, I mean, it is in character with his political interests. But he says that Nigel Farage rang him on Saturday night and said, it's now or never. Do you want to follow Robert Jenrick? And he made the decision on Sunday to do it. Yeah. So that says that maybe there is a crunch feeling within Tory MPs that they have to go. And so, it might be a big thing, a big momentum shift for politics. But I just wonder that it starts to look a bit farcical on one level, because is it not just the arsonists changing the boiler suits, but it's the same people that caused all the problems that they're calling
Jenrick's
out?
argument is, look, I resigned from government over immigration. I realised we weren't going to do, the Rwanda plan wasn't going to actually deliver anything. I actually resigned. But again, a lot of people at the time said, yeah, you're doing that because the Tories are going to lose the next election and you want to be set there ready as a potential leader. He's run for the leadership. He didn't get it. To be fair, he did a lot better. I think he got 43% or something. He was a lot better than many had expected him to do, given that he was, he'd been a junior minister and Kemi Badenoch was a big name. She'd been the front runner for ages. He is right now, despite Kemi Badenoch moving up in the polls. And I think she's done some stonking PMQs lately. I thought she was very decisive in how, basically, the sacking of Robert Jenrick last Thursday was utterly ruthless. I mean, I think a lot of people were very impressed with that. She was, I think, the big winner, weirdly, last Thursday, bouncing him out of the party like that. But at the end of the day, she's going up in the polls a little bit. Did he actually think, I didn't bother asking this because lots of people asked him this over the weekend, actually think, look, she's going up in the polls, my chances of being Tory leader are out, I may as well make a break somewhere new.
Yes, I mean, Kemi Badenoch, I don't think she's really good enough to be Prime Minister, but
in what way? You think Keir Starmer is?
I think that Kemi Badenoch doesn't actually have the breadth of convictions that was the reason she was elected. She's very staunch on some subjects which made her popular with the Tory base, trans being one of those. But actually there are lots of topics where she really struggles to explain her views, and I think under closer examination it often falls apart. So,
I would say that for all the party leaders.
Well, indeed,
right
but
now.
This is the thing. I think we live in an age of mediocrity, and without being personally unkind about Robert Jenrick, I really think he is another example of that. I just wonder whether he's slightly swallowed his own Kool-Aid of his own bravado, his own sort of messiah status on the right that he's tried to give himself.
Don't all politicians feel that way? I'm always fascinated. I mean, Ed Miliband apparently doing in talks with Andy Burnham. If you I mean, it's all being denied, obviously, but but if you become leader, I'll be your chancellor. I mean, God help us. I mean, literally, the country goes bankrupt overnight if he is chancellor. You thought Rachel Reeves was bad? Oh, I mean, this is good. I mean, it'll be fun for the laughs for the first 20 minutes, and then the proverbial will hit the fan big time with the bond markets. But I mean, a lot of these people are just completely and utterly deluded about their abilities and their popularity.
I mean, Andy Burnham, a man who isn't even in Parliament but seems to think on his third attempt he might be able to win a Labour leadership election, despite having come something like fourth in the previous two. The Labour Party will tear itself apart before it lets Andy Burnham anywhere near a Downing Street office.
We shall see. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. We're going to be talking more about those Trump tariffs and threats and our spineless Prime Minister in a few moments' time. We'll get your calls on that as well, but we didn't get a chance for calls in the first hour, so let's get straight to them. Mary is on the line. Mary's in Cyprus. Are you living there or are you on holes, Mary?
No, I live here. We've lived here for 25 years.
All right, for some. Tell, just, I always do this. What's the weather like right now?
Cold.
Good. We all feel better. For knowing that. Mary, what did you make of Robert Jenrick's departure and also what he had to say an hour ago on the show?
Well, I have got a bit to say. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
First of all, I was really disappointed he didn't get the leadership of the Tory party, and particularly now if he was leader it would be quite good fun. And I'm sure he's a very nice man, but I'm in some ways disappointed he's gone over to Reform because, A, he's very ambitious, as he admits, and he is very like Nigel Farage, and I can see clashes coming, and we might end up with a Rupert Lowe situation.
And I did put that to him, yes.
But also, how is he going to get on with all these Tories coming over that he didn't get on with?
Yeah. That's the thing. Do you think that Nigel Farage should accept more Tories? Because for instance, people go, we don't want a load more Tories. This is supposed to be the party that was, anti the Tories. But then, Nigel Farage was a Tory when he was younger. Richard Tice was a Tory.
Well, I think. How can I say this? I was going to say, I think he needs to be careful because there's been so much argy-bargy in the Conservative Party amongst them, and if they're all going over, are they going to go over and cause trouble for Nigel?
Very interesting.
I think it's a situation that needs sort of very careful thought, which I'm sure Nigel is doing.
Yes. I mean, Zia Youssef certainly seems to be concerned about that. Mary, I so appreciate your call. I hope it does warm up for you in Cyprus. Appreciate that. Let's go to David, a bit closer to home in Essex. David, what do you make of Robert Jenrick?
Robert Jenrick is a complete waste of space. What he tried to do was pathetic. He tried to embarrass Kemi Baden of the Tory party, and he got what he deserved. He was humiliated, standing there, being caught out. Absolutely beautiful play by Kemi Baden.
Oh, I thought she played an absolute blinder. But if there hadn't been a mole and someone hadn't seen the document and he'd been able to announce, as we woke up on a Monday morning as usual to some big announcement. There's another Nigel Farage press conference. We all go, oh God, what's it going to be this time? And then he produced the Shadow Justice Secretary, frontbench Tory, the most popular Tory according to Conservative home polls among party members, rival for the leadership, and he turns up on his own terms. That would have been a magnificent coup, certainly for Farage. Do you think it's a good move for the Reform Party, or is it a good thing for the Tories? Kemi says, look, he's Farage's problem, not mine anymore. Good riddance. What do you make of the fallout now?
What I will say is Labour got elected through the middle ground. They took the middle ground and they won the landslide. Conservatives, obviously, because of the mess they made of things. But now they've got backtracked, they've U-turned so many times. They've now lurched to the left. The answer is not to lurch right across to the right. The silent majority aren't all listening to your radio station. They're out there and they want decent leadership that represents the whole of this country.
Yep.
And Kemi Baden is in that position. She's showing leadership right now that the other two would just love to have. I'm afraid Reform, I'm concerned about Reform, and I'm concerned that they are going far too far to the right.
In what way?
Labour have got to the left.
In what way?
I think they will cause major, I'm really saying it's not being believed, that if they get elected into government, they will cause a major issue for the, for the cohesion of our country.
Why? I mean, we've had Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, at the weekend say, if it walks like a dog, quacks like a duck, etc. Saying, basically she thinks that a Nigel Farage government would be a fascist government, which I think is genuinely embarrassing for her to say. But what are Reform's policies that are too far to the right for you? Just briefly.
They say they're going to repatriate hundreds of thousands of people from this country. That will not happen.
I worry that it won't happen. But no, but they're not talking about, it's not like the BNP and it's like brown and black people blatantly racist. It's nothing. They're talking about people who have arrived here illegally or overstayed their visas legally and they're in the country illegally. Surely we want illegal migrants to be out of the country. Well, that's not controversial.
Yes, we do. That's why I've come over from a convert from Radio 5 Live.
Quite right.
Because of the left-wing rubbish I was hearing from them. I'm a conservative.
So what's too far right about that then?
Well, I believe they're on the verge of going beyond that position. And I think that's very, very dangerous for this country. And I will not go that far. I want to see illegal immigrants taken out of this country, but I believe they will cause major division in our country. And if they get elected, I believe within 2-3 years they'll be absolutely thrown out of office. And we'll never see the likes of them again.
Very interesting. David, thank you very much. Fascinating call. 2 great calls there. Thank you for that. Benjamin Butterworth, your reaction to what David has to say.
I mean, Kemi Badenoch will hope more people see the country in that way. I do think there is a danger that, to paraphrase David Cameron on Nigel Farage, fruitcakes and Fruit Loops.
He's not a fruit. Thing is, he's not a fruitcake.
Robert Jenrick isn't, but there is
neither is Nigel Farage.
But there is a very real danger that those people in a small party trying to shape itself have a bigger sway, and will someone like Robert Jenrick really be that comfortable with that?
Ed Miliband currently is the let's make the country bankrupt by net zero secretary. He's literally a fruitcake. Literally insane. That policy is insane.
Well, I don't agree, but...
Well, that's good, but if you don't do facts, you're insane too. I mean, the fact is it's going to totally bankrupt the country. It's insane.
But
even Nessa, his own Quango, says it's going to cost trillions of pounds. We don't have trillions of pounds.
But on the actual question you asked, look, I don't think these people are doing these things for great principles. I think their principles could have been applied before there was a job offer. You know, when the risk of losing his seat was there, he didn't defect to reform, and that's the case in all these people. So I really take it with a pinch of salt. But I understand the logic, which is that it would be pretty big decision to put reform in government. When it actually gets to the election, people will say, hang on, do any of these people have a clue how to do the job they're applying for to run a country?
But at the end, we've got the same with Labour. Most of these people, it's so bad for Labour being, they brought in a whole load of Blairites. They basically put the band back together. Tony Blair's first government.
But I mean, that does illustrate the problem of having so many people without governmental experience. And so I suspect Farage is trying to say, we need people who've done it before.
We had Tories in government for 14 years, loads of experience. How well did that work out?
Well, I mean
brilliantly. That's why we are where we are.
That's the whole point, and that's the problem that Farage will take. That people will. He hopes that they will look at it and say, okay, you're serious people, you have some establishment credibility, but actually, will they just say, well, you're just the same people with a different rosette, and you're taking the mick out of us?
I think a lot of people will say. I think people feel after the Tories, and will certainly feel after Labour. How much worse can it get?
Well, I mean, that's the gamble, and that's what we saw probably with the Brexit vote and with the Trump vote. No, in that people were so frustrated at the status quo, they were willing to take the risk. Yeah. And that is what reform centres on, whether people are still willing. Your thoughts, please get in touch, 0344 499 1000. I'm going to take some calls also on Donald Trump threatening this tariff war and what Keir Starmer's response should be, because it was kind of just a big fat shrug today at his press conference. Barstow, time now to find out how you could be with a chance of winning a trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay at a 4-star Intercontinental hotel and $2.5 grand spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen to find out how you can enter.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at TalkSport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
You do not want to miss out on your chance. Very good luck to you. Let's take a quick break and then more on Trump and those tariffs. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk. 11:24 is the time. Do keep your calls, keep on coming in. 0344 499 1000 and all the big topics. I want to hear particularly your thoughts on these Trump tariffs. This announcement of these tariffs on the UK and EU over Greenland. Basically, if you stand in the way, Donald Trump is going to impose tariffs on these the UK, Denmark, Netherlands, France, Germany, Finland, Norway, Sweden on the 1st of February, and then he's going to raise them to 20 or 10%, 25% very soon after that. Basically, if we don't say, yeah, you can just have Greenland. A lot of people are just playing this down, Benjamin Butterworth, saying, look, you know, it's just talk, it's a negotiation, he's not going to invade Greenland anyway. And as one of our Republican guests pointed out, it would only take him 15 minutes to do that. I mean, it's one man and a husky, basically, isn't it? But press conference from Keir Starmer this morning, and he did say, look, you know, it's completely wrong for Greenland. You know, this threat against Greenland is completely wrong, and the principle that cannot be set aside is Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and of Denmark alone. But he didn't. He went on about active government, steady at home, engaged abroad. I mean, it's just utter soundbite nonsense. And then he said we prefer solutions to soundbites. What is the solution going to be to this? Because it ain't going to be a military threat or even retaliatory tariffs from Europe, is it? Because at the end of the day, Donald Trump doesn't care.
No, I think that's right. I mean, the EU have suggested $80 billion worth of retaliatory tariffs, but I don't think that he would care because he's sort of consigned to the outcome that he wants. But the question is actually, what is the outcome he wants? Because the US is not going to take over Greenland. It's not going to happen. You referenced in your interview earlier that they'd been offered as many military bases as they require. I can't imagine NATO or Denmark would have an objection to that, given it's in our shared interests. And I do.
It's good economically for Greenland.
Indeed. And also, of course, I mean, let's be realistic. Although untapped, there is a great deal of natural resource, of oil, of gas suspected to be around Greenland. So it has serious value. A cynic would suggest that the combination of Greenland being very naturally resourceful and Venezuela being the most oil-rich country on Earth, that there may be a strategy related to that in Donald Trump's behaviour for the US. I think it'd be incredibly cynical to think the US had given up its interest in oil, as cynical as thinking Robert Jenrick had given up his interest in being Prime Minister. But the other part is that, look, Russia and China will be enjoying what's happening now. It helps them because if it harms our economies, it harms our agreement in national security, then how is that protecting us?
And this is the king. It's very, very, very clear to me that the winners in this are Russia and China. They're laughing all the way, to their military supplies when the NATO alliance is not strong. Now it's interesting. Our Republican guest a bit earlier, Greg Spencer, was saying, no, this is damaging to them. This is Donald Trump standing up to them. But he could have done that with them going, hey guys, we're going to have to really protect Greenland, and everyone basically is going to be doing Donald Trump's bidding. How confident are you that this meeting in Davos, the World Economic Forum, Donald Trump's turning up on Wednesday, Keir Starmer wasn't going to go. He went the year when no one else went. And now he wasn't planning to go this year because he gets told off. Even though there's that amazing interview a little while back, wasn't there? Just saying, what do you prefer, Westminster or Davos? Go, Davos. It was like, wow. I mean, I can't imagine him. He's great on his skis. I don't know. But I imagine him in his parka. But basically, he's going to have to turn up because it's where all the big boys are going to be. Donald Trump's giving a speech. He normally just trashes everyone there, which I rather love. But they're going to be trying to talk him down. Macron's being the big I am right now. He loves a bit of that, wanting to have these trade tariff wars. Tariff wars are just going to hurt both American consumers and European consumers. They're definitely going to hurt us. America is our biggest single export market as a nation. And a lot of high quality goods and cars and the like. There is no doubt at all there is going to be an economic hit if we do end up in a tariff war, even if we just have the US tariffs. But American consumers are also going to be hit. But there isn't anything else we can threaten, is there?
Well, I mean, if there is a so-called tariff war, we export and import almost exactly the same value of goods between us. So, maybe, well, I suppose it wouldn't.
Yeah, but that's the smaller percentage of their trade.
Exactly. And most of our trade is services, and that's not got a tariff accusation on it. But the car sector would be probably really quite damaged by it. Donald Trump is sending the biggest ever US delegation to Davos. And so for a man that hates globalism, supposedly, then he's engaging pretty heavily.
I think that says there's going to be fireworks. I think it's going to be quite lively. I think there's probably a load of other meetings that are happening, by the by. Let's go to another call, because Mike is in Southampton, wants to have his say on this issue. He's called in on 0344 499 1000. Mike, what do you want to say?
Well, really, I'm confused, really. Why are we so concerned that China might get a foothold in Greenland and be a threat to this country, and yet we're going to allow them to build a spy centre in London, or get a foothold in London, a matter of about a metre away from important data cables?
Absolutely.
It seems silly.
I mean, I think seems silly is the understatement of the year, but you absolutely nailed it. It is absolutely crazy, isn't it? And we're told the Americans have objected. Previously they said it was okay, now they're objecting and everyone's concerned about it. And we're expecting that to be given the okay as early as tomorrow, which is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're also giving the Chagos Islands away and paying for the privilege.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But again, the Americans apparently agree with this, even though, of course, they'll effectively will be leasing the Diego Garcia military base, which the Americans use. What's fascinating is Donald Trump last week was saying about, you have to own something. You can't lease something. It's not the same. You don't care about things that you lease. The Diego Garcia base has been used for major, jet sorties, and battles in the Middle East. I mean, he's saying it doesn't matter because it's going to be leased. None of this makes sense. Sometimes I worry that our leaders don't think in joined up ways.
No, not at all. The Chinese took over Singapore after 100 years.
Hong Kong.
It's no longer ours.
Hong Kong.
The same will happen with Chagos. I mean, basically, I think the Chinese look on the world as creeping death. We want to get a bit of this and a bit of that, so we'll do it, bit by bit. And Chagos Islands is quite a big chunk of it.
Yeah. What do you think that Keir Starmer should have said this morning?
Should have said,
I resign. Other than I resign.
I think if I was in Greenland, I'd welcome Donald Trump. I've got to be honest. I'd rather have a big country like that behind me. Rather than Denmark, despite Denmark being, they are good with what they've done, but it's not a lot.
But here's the thing. I mean, they did have America behind them because they're a part of the independent territory, part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which is a member of NATO, and they did have America. That was the whole point. Yeah,
but whether he takes it over or not, we've got more important things here, and I think Starmer should be looking at them. I think whether he takes it over or not is less of an issue to us than giving the Chinese an entry into Great Britain the way they have done.
Very true. I'm going to put that to my next guest, actually, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, who's been very outspoken on a lot of these issues. Mike, thank you as always. This is why I love your calls, because we just get so many brilliant points. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Give us a call. Have your say. Here's Sir Ian Duncan-Smith up next. We're going to be talking about, defections and what's going on with the Greenland row in China and that threat, but also going to be talking a little later in the half hour about where we are on the West Midlands Police and that police chief being able to retire outrageously, full pension and everything, rather than face, let's face big questions over his integrity and, frankly, his competence over that Maccabi Tel Aviv match. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:33 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Benjamin Butterworth is with me. Delighted to be joined now by former Conservative Party leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. A very good morning to you.
Oh, morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. There's lots to talk about. Can I just start with a question? I'm sure I've put this to you in the last week. I think I've asked you a million times. Are you going to be one of the next defections to reform?
No, I'm expecting reform to defect to me, actually, at some point. Not stock and barrel. But so far, they've been against that because I'm a member of the Conservative Party.
Have they ever approached you in that sort of subtle in the canteen sort of way?
Of course, I've had different approaches, but I just laugh it off. I don't think this is the way to go about it. My personal view is that we face a very difficult situation looking across the whole of politics at the moment. There are 4, maybe even 5 parties on the left now. Very extreme in some cases. They would no doubt at the next election come together immediately to form some kind of leftist platform. And that would leave basically a problem here on the Conservative side of the platform. And I think simply say to everybody, really all we ever do with this division at the moment is make sure that the left gets in. And that's what's going to happen if we're not careful. So I think these things will settle over the next year or so. And I think we have to be sensible about it.
Isn't that what Robert Jenrick is counting on? They will settle, but they'll settle in Reform's favour, not the Tories' favour. And he thinks the Tories are finished. I mean, given our interviews, not just off the record, behind the scenes, you publicly have probably disagreed with more Conservative Party and Conservative government standpoints than I think anyone else.
Well, to be fair, no matter who's in government, I seem to be in opposition. So it's not. I've reached the stage really in life, I suppose, where I don't think I should hide what I think about something. I want to be clear about.
Did you used to have to do that?
Sorry?
Did you used to have to do that? Should you be in a party where you have to hide?
Well, the way the political parties are formed, when you first get in, you absolutely have to toe the line. And discipline and supporting your government or whatever is very important. But there are times when, if something is important, not on anything, but something is important, like China or wherever it happens to be, on Chagos, you come out and say, I don't agree with you, and you're prepared to have a debate. That makes it, therefore, worthwhile to be in politics, because you're there for ideas and debate. But, all along the way, I think the Conservative Party, I believe this is why I'm still there, is the party that can form a proper functioning government. And my worry is that if we go on like this at the moment, we're going to end up with a sort of mess. And I've looked at Reform's councils, and the councils that they've had have all been pretty much a disaster. They've come in claiming great things. They're going to sweep away, do another sort of
they haven't even been in for a year, have they, most of them?
Yeah, but many of them are now piled up huge debts and real problems. I mean, look at Kent, for example, where the leader is now swearing and shouting at many of her own online. And so, no, my general view is, look, we did get things wrong, absolutely. I was one of those during COVID that was opposed to the perpetual lockdowns.
You're an absolute hero for many of my audience for that. I can tell you that.
I'm angry because having got the welfare budget down by 32 billion while I was there, instituted universal credit, which got people on in that crisis period of COVID in a way that the legacy benefits wouldn't have done. What we did was we released all the checks and balances, and because now we're paying the cost of that. So those are the things I was critical of, and I remain critical, and I put forward alternative ideas how to change it.
Let's just say next time round it's Reform they're in, they've got a majority government, they call you up, Nigel Farage says, you understand welfare better than anyone, you actually achieved something in welfare when you were in office, I'd like you to come and run welfare. Would you do it?
As I said to you earlier on, no matter who's in government, I tend to be in opposition.
Okay.
So I will guide my tongue very carefully.
Okay, just finally, do you think Andrew Rossendale, who's a Shadow Foreign Office Minister, MP for Romford, do you think he was a big loss? He's apparently resigned from the party, joined Reform over the issue of the Chagos Islands.
I'm sorry he's gone. I'm not quite certain why he thinks he had to go over Chagos, because the member of the House of Lords representing Reform did exactly what the Conservatives did in there. They voted on getting this regret motion, which is about the most powerful motion they can have. It will come back to the House of Lords after the government gets rid of that, and that is the opportunity then to vote lock, stock and barrel against the Chagos bill.
All right. Let me ask you about international affairs, though, because Keir Starmer had a press conference this morning, a couple of hours ago. Didn't say very much. He was criticising people with sound bites. There seemed to be a lot of sound bites, something about active government, steady at home, engaged abroad. He did say that Donald Trump's threats over Greenland were completely wrong, and he said that the security of Greenland matters, and that the principle that cannot be set aside is that Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and to the people of Denmark, and that right is fundamental. But we didn't have any promise of any retaliation, any work, it's going to be dialogue, we're told. Why do you think, as one of our callers has just pointed out, this is Mike who called in, why do you think that Keir Starmer is so concerned with Greenland, and apparently this threat from China and Russia as well, which is what Donald Trump is justifying his seizure he proposes of Greenland on, when he's about to give, possibly as early as tomorrow, go ahead for the Chinese to have a super spying mega embassy just across the river from me, right next to some of my most vital communication cables that basically control our economy?
Well, first of all, as you know, I've been opposed to this Chinese embassy since the very moment that it was first touted, and certainly I've opposed it doesn't matter whether the Conservatives or Labour on this, they're wrong. China is a threat. It is our most serious threat. It should be in the upper tier of FIRS, the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme. That would then define it as a threat, and we wouldn't therefore be giving them this embassy. I mean, imagine giving the Soviet Union during the Cold War an embassy right by this cabling, right in the heart of London, right opposite the Tower of London, such that they can actually dominate communications all over central London, including that which goes to the security service. And I don't agree with anyone that says it's all right, they can cope. No, they always say they can cope because the government asks them to do that. They won't be able to cope. And they said the same about Huawei, and we campaigned to show that Huawei was a threat, and finally they caved in, and actually the security services said, no, we didn't really think we could cope. So the reality is this is a disaster. I had a big campaign with my colleagues. I set up Interparliamentary Alliance on China. We've now got Labour Party members as well in this. The point is we had a big demonstration outside the embassy on Saturday. Kemi came to speak at it. Others spoke too from different parties. The main point is we are by and large united against this, and the government is only doing it because they're so desperate to get China on side to give them some ghastly trade arrangement. And all that will happen then is they'll dump all their overproduced batteries, electric cars, solar arrays, wind farms, many of which are made by slave labour, and many of which are subsidised against the WTO rules by their central bank. So they'll kill our own industry here, flat bank, and it will be disaster. So my answer is they've got to get tough. I understand the White House through the national, I can't remember which one it is now, has actually complained to the government directly, and they have said that they don't think this is a good idea. So the government now has to rethink, and I see that the Secretary of State has pushed it back. So it's not, I gather, going to happen on Wednesday or tomorrow. I saw that she's pushed it back for further consideration.
But it's been delayed again. Really it was supposed to be December and then January and then, Yeah,
it's a disaster. It shouldn't happen, and it will open us up. There's going to be 200 more personnel in that location, and they are basically going to be, under diplomacy, they're going to be spies. And so the whole process is a disaster. Many of the other Five Eyes have complained, I'm told, about this. So places like Australia, Canada, other places, I'm told, have actually said, well, they're worried about this location. So they should be. It's a disaster, and it's a historic site, and there are 200 British citizens living on the site, and nothing has happened to help them at all by the government. They're just cast into outer darkness.
It is utterly as perplexing, although, of course, it was a Conservative government that sold them the site. That was madness as well. But it is utterly perplexing that anyone thought this was a good idea. This is as perplexing as the Chagos Islands decision. Why do you think all these decisions have been made? Because we're told this is about the economics. As you say, I mean, the Chinese aren't going to offer us some super-duper deal. They've been trading with the Australians who put their foot down with them. They have to trade. They need to sell us stuff. That's how their economy works. Why on earth the last Tory government, Chagos, on selling the embassy site, and this government on this, why are they so supine when it comes to China?
The Foreign Office. I have to tell you that I think the Foreign Office has been wrong on so many things, and they're wrong on this. And they advised the last government, and they've advised this government, that they need to give the Chinese this embassy. In fact, if you dig into this, the real reason is they want to rebuild their own embassy in Beijing. And China has essentially said to them, you won't be allowed to do that unless we get our embassy. So there's a bit of blackmail going on there. Secondly, I also understand the Chinese have often cut off the water supplies to the embassy in Beijing as another sort of bullying threat.
And we give in to that. And everyone's complaining about Donald Trump.
I know, and you give way, once you give way to these people, then all that happens is they grab more. And that is exactly the problem right now with this embassy. So, we are acting like cowards.
Okay, so what...
We should say no.
Are we acting like cowards when it comes to Donald Trump and his threats to Greenland? Should Keir Starmer do more?
Well, I first of all, I think it's right to say that threatening to take over Greenland like that, regardless, is the wrong move. It's the wrong move to an ally. It's a wrong move because of NATO. It's also a wrong move for a democracy that is the key component in our resistance against totalitarian states around the world, which are growing like mad at the moment. So we need America to be selling the message of freedom, and therefore threatening Greenland is a stupid exercise, I think. What they should be doing is recognize if it's a threat they're after, and there is a threat to the northern areas, in the polar regions, then they have the right already by agreement to be able to put as many troops as they like and many sites as they like in Greenland. Greenland has handed that over to them years ago during the Cold War. So that's not the issue. If you're worried about a threat, you have every right, America, to put whatever you like in Greenland. I think it's really more to do with the minerals. And I think this is the issue. There are very important minerals lying, I gather, underneath the ice cap in Greenland, and as more of that gets a bit more exposed, and they would like to have that. Mostly what they call rare earth minerals, which are the things that make the little...
And which China mostly controls. But is that worth the risk to basically disintegrating the Western alliance of democratic nations under NATO? Is it worth risking that to get to those minerals?
No, because we could do a deal. I mean, the deal should be that Western nations should invest in Greenland to produce those minerals, and if necessary, to produce them and function them through the industrial process that allows them to become usable items that can be used in telecommunications. You don't need to own the island to have an agreement that allows you to access that. And I think the UK should be part of that. We desperately need our own supply, as does the rest of NATO. So that's how I would do it. I'd say, look, we'll withdraw on this, but let's come to an agreement that allows us all to invest for our collective security, and I think that would be the right way to do it.
So, Douglas Smith, always good to talk to you. You've had a lot of ground there, former Conservative Party leader, not about to defect to Reform. Thank you very much, Steve. Just a brief word from Benjamin Butterworth, listening to all of that. I mean, this is the thing, the military bases, it's not, that's not an issue. They can do that anyway. Do a deal on these minerals. I mean, here's the thing, maybe it wasn't a good idea for America and Europe to allow China to basically buy up the world's minerals, which is what they've been doing. They haven't got them at home, which they've been buying them across Africa and South America, and we've all just sat by going, oh, carry on as you were. What a surprise. Look, economic disaster.
The problem and the risk is clearly real, but this isn't the answer. Surely the rational answer, and Syrian implied this there, is that if you've got Greenland with all these natural resources that are becoming accessible and valuable, then why don't you use that to fund the rise in defence spending for NATO that everyone agrees that we need?
Well, except they belong to Denmark and Greenland. I mean, we wouldn't be,
Except that would be a rational decision for our shared risk, because, as you say, Denmark can't defend it if someone comes for it, so why not make that the deal, that funds our NATO costs?
Interesting. Benjamin, thank you very much. Your thoughts on all of that, all that conversation, give us a call 0344 499 1000. Get to more of your calls in the next half hour. Up next, going to talk about the police. That West Midlands police chief allowed to retire outrageously over his abject failings over the Maccabi Tel Aviv football match fan ban. Also, police in Britain's first Big Brother town, apparently catching criminals every 34 minutes using facial recognition cameras. Oh my God, police catching criminals. Why didn't we think of that before? That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 11:50. Just to let you know, after midday, I'm delighted to say we're going to have a couple of the brilliant, the amazing, the wonderful Darlington nurses who won their case against a man calling himself trans, basically insisting on using their changing room, standing there in his boxer shorts, asking them whether they're getting changed or not at their NHS trust. They've won that case, hands down, absolute heroes to anyone sane who understands basic biology and women's rights. And they're going to be here live in the studio in a few minutes' time. I cannot wait for that. Right now, let's talk about policing stories with former police officer and wonderful campaigner for victims over the years, Norman Brennan. A very, very good morning to you, Norman.
Yeah, good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. There's two big stories I want to talk about. First, let's talk about this Britain's first Big Brother town. This is basically Croydon in South London. The Scotland Yard have installed fixed cameras on lampposts at the entrance and exit to Croydon town centre after it was designated a crime hotspot. And apparently this Big Brother town now, using facial recognition cameras, they're catching criminals every 34 minutes. I mean, since when was catching criminals part of the police's job? I thought they didn't do that anymore.
Well, I worked in an era where we walked the streets, we patrolled the streets, interacted with the public, attended almost every single crime that was reported.
Mind-blowing, mind-blowing.
We had the officers and the ability to investigate crime, and there was a deterrent because even the courts backed us up. I look now and we never see a police officer, and you highlighted Croydon. It's a very high crime area, certainly as far as homicide and knife crime is concerned. I drive through it sometimes, I try to avoid it, and I look at all the streets, and over the last 10 years, I can remember when I reported on somebody being shot dead or stabbed to death. When you've got that in an area and a community, you have to do something. So if you can't put the police officers on the streets in the numbers you want, why not have like an eye in the sky that actually can detect them, tell the police that there is a suspect that is likely to be responsible for often a very serious crime in the high street, and send officers there immediately to arrest them.
Yeah, but I mean, there are, of course, civil liberties concerns. We're all being clocked, we're all being watched, and there's an element where, you know, if the police actually, you know, caught a lot of these people a bit sooner and bothered investigating crimes, they would actually get them. I'm hoping the guy who stole my handbag in June 2024 might wander to Croydon, because he's apparently a wanted man, because he hasn't turned up to court repeatedly. I'm not too hopeful. I don't think that's part of his manner, judging by where I tracked him down to when he had me AirPods that he'd stolen. But I mean, is this the future? Are we in this sort of Minority Report thing where everyone's on camera and that's how people are going to be found?
Well, since I retired from the police 15 years ago, I've detained 34 shoplifters in Tesco's and Waitrose near me.
I love you for that. I love you for that.
Just like you, Julie, and only a few months ago in Waitrose and Twickenham, I know all the staff, I know the managers there. I walked in on a Sunday to get a chicken before going to watch Man United play. I'm a bugger for punishment. And a shoplifter was seen in there, and the staff said, Norman, because they all know I'm ex-Old Bill, they said he was in last week and he bottled one of our security guards who tried to detain him. So when you ask why security guards don't detain them, this one is a bit more bottled than most, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
So what does he do? He goes straight up in front of me, starts stealing items. I go to the front door and I say, ex-Old Bill, mate, you're nicked for assault. He punched me in the face. I've got a black eye. We hit a car. The wing mirror smashed off. Even at 65, I still know how to handle myself. Took him to the ground. He was nicked. He was wanted for assault on police, burglary and other offences, was remanded overnight, released by the courts, failed to turn up, pretty much like what you're saying.
Shocker.
And at the end of the day, a 4-week suspended sentence.
Oh, for God's sake. I was just about to give you a round of applause, because thank you for... Can I just say, real men. We like real men on this show, do we not? People actually standing up and keeping people safe, doing the right thing. We need more people to do that. But again, people don't want to take the risk. And if you do take the risk, nothing happens. I mean, it's so painful.
Shoplifting is an epidemic.
Yeah, and it's not just shoplifting. There's violence involved. There's intimidation of the stock. I've said similar things have happened in my local supermarket as well. I couldn't agree with you more. Well, listen, well done to you for still still, actually doing something for the local community and the people you know well in your local store. I mean, we need more people like you. We really do. I'll tell you one person I don't think would have done that, and that's the West Midlands Police Chief, as was Craig Guilford, who retired very surprisingly, out of the blue on Friday. He was allowed to retire with immediate effect, even though, of course, big question marks over his future. People calling for him to be sacked by his Police and Crime Commissioner, to resign, have some decency, some honour. No, he went for the retirement option. This, as there were huge question marks over, well, let's face it, blatant lying that he and his senior officers had done, and then covered up, and then lied again, abject incompetence and lying, making up evidence about the reasons for the decision to ban fans from the Israeli team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, playing against Aston Villa last November in Birmingham, which they basically did at the behest of the local Islamist extremists and militants who said, yeah, there's going to be trouble if you let the Jews come into Birmingham city centre. What do you make of the decision to allow him to retire, full pension, full works, when he was under such a cloud?
Well, I'll be quite honest with you, the behaviour of him and Westminster Police defies belief. Rely on AI, and it just typifies what I've been saying for ages, and many other retired officers, is senior police officers, chief officers, now pander to certain sections of their community, mostly on religious grounds. Senior police officers, chief officers, when I was in the job, had worked their way up through the ranks. Nobody pulled their strings, and they realised what the public wanted and what victims want. Now, they go to woke school, they're detached from policing in the public, and they seem to pander and feign to those that shout the loudest and probably are likely to cause more issues for them. In relation to what should have happened, well, he actually did retire, Julia, 2 years ago. He got his lump sum, he got his full pension. The following day, he was reappointed Chief Constable, so he already has his pension. The Police Crime Commissioner had two choices. One was to sack him, which probably wouldn't have been immediately. It would have meant probably a discipline hearing, which meant that would take up to a year. Yeah, but that would take up to a year, costing almost $200,000 in lost salary, plus all the legal fees. He probably would have been dismissed, but that would have taken away the focus of where the money should really be going. But what is still happening is that he now has left the police. There's an independent officer police conduct investigation, so he still may be recalled, Julia, for a discipline hearing.
I mean, he absolutely should be. There's no question at all about that. I don't think this should always be about the money, though. And again, as long as he can be recalled, but I think no officer should be allowed to retire from the force while there are questions of their dishonesty, because at the end of the day, this isn't about a bit of incompetence. I mean, there was incompetence, but there's also the fact, the police made up evidence and then lied about it in Parliament and lied about it to people. This is a serious allegation. This is about an end to policing as we know it, without fear or favour.
Well, I agree, but it is and it isn't about money, and it is about justice. Yep. He's now gone. He's not costing the police service any more money. And as I said, Julia, there is an independent officer police conduct investigation. Yep. If there is evidence, he will be brought back, put before a panel, and he may well be dismissed in so much as, had you still been serving, sir, you would have been dismissed.
I think he should face criminal charges for misconduct in public office. But there we are. Norman Brennan, thank you so much. And again, huge credit to you, absolutely, for tackling that violent shoplifter, former police officer Norman Brennan. We need more like Norman Brennan, not just in the police force, but just ordinary citizens. Benjamin Butterworth, your response, the Western Midlands story.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you just think when you get a situation that he is able to take retirement, how do you take retirement twice and at the age of 52? It really strikes me as quite...
Police are allowed to retire after 30 years' service.
But it still strikes me as a pretty good deal by most people's standards. Yeah. And then what message does that send to their successors in that police force about whether there'll be consequences to this conduct? And what message does it send to the Jewish community who live there about whether they were believed, whether they were trusted whether they've been supported. I doubt they feel supported.
No, oh, absolutely. I think it's just genuinely, I think this is so serious. I wrote a column in The Sun and about Robert Jenrick last week, but also about this. This is, sectarian politics is bad enough, but sectarian policing is an absolute outrage, and we've seen that absolutely solid now for the last few years, and it has got to end. And more revelations every single day about it. It's extraordinary. Anyway, more coming up. Benjamin's going to briefly leave the studio, but we are going to be joined by two of the Darlington nurses who won their case against NHS Trust. They insisted they got changed in front of a man. He claimed to be a woman, but he was a man in his boxer shorts. They're absolute heroes of mine. They're in the studio. You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon and welcome back to the show. Pleasure to have your company. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is just great to have you join us. Got lots more top guests to come in the next hour with you all the way till 1. If you've missed anything of the show, if you want to go back and watch my interview with Robert Jenrick at 10 o'clock, go to our YouTube page. We cunningly called it, it's really easy to find, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You've got no excuses for not finding it. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. In just a moment, I'm going to be chatting with two of the Darlington nurses who won their tribunal on Friday over a policy that allowed their transgender colleague, a man, to use a female changing rooms. Also, we're going to be talking about whether or not we're going to see an Australian-style social media ban for under 16s and the horrific impact, we're told by doctors, of tech on children and young people. And we're going to also be talking about Donald Trump and his administration discussing the possibility of offering asylum to Britain's Jews. That's how bad things have got. More of your calls, very, very welcome indeed. Lots of you getting in touch about Robert Jenrick and defections to reform by the Tories, but also about Donald Trump threatening to put a tariff war on Britain and Europe if they do not back his plan to basically seize Greenland. We had a press conference with the Prime Minister today and he was on full blancmange display. But what should he do in response? He wasn't really saying anything. They're going to talk Is that the response? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text costs £1 standard network rate message. But you knew all that already. Anyway, let me get to my first two guests in this hour, who I am so delighted to welcome to studio, because there are so many women who are not the J.K. Rowlings, who are at the front line on social media battling away against the trans lunacy. But there are so many women in ordinary jobs, living ordinary lives with their families, going about their daily business, who are the real victims and who, when they fight back, are the real heroines. Certainly they've been called heroines by J.K. Rowling, and I 100% agree with them. They are Lisa Lockie and Bethany Hutchinson, two of the Darlington nurses who at the end of last week won their claim against their NHS trust after they were forced to change their uniforms, change down to their bra and knickers in a changing room with a man. But that was okay because it was a man who pretended that he thought he was a woman. That's the reality. Lisa and Bethany, I am so delighted to have you in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
There have been a lot of cases, an awful lot of cases in recent years. We try and cover them as best we can. But just talk us through, just briefly, what actually happened to you guys, because there were 28 women originally who complained about this. But where were you working and what was actually happening in this changing room?
Do you want to go or me?
Bethany, we're going to put it on
right,
with me first then.
So we work on the day surgery unit in Darlington Memorial Hospital, and this had started in 2023. And there were a number of women that came to me concerned about this individual in the changing room. And I decided to raise this with, sort of local level management. So raised it with the sister, was hoping that she would then raise it with the matron and something would be resolved. And honestly, I think we thought that something would be resolved. I think we thought it was going to be quite an easy sort of resolution to this.
There's a man in our changing room.
There's a man in the changing room.
And let's clarify. He goes by the name Rose Henderson now, but he's had no surgery. He would be naked all but his boxer shorts.
Correct,
he's quite clearly a man. There's no question that he is a man. He's had no surgery, no treatment. He's in a heterosexual relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
And he was claiming that he was a trans woman, which is a man, we know this under the law, and with her eyes and ears, and he was standing watching you get changed.
Yes, and a number of women were saying that he was watching them get changed. He made one of our colleagues, Karen Danson, who's one of the claimants in the case, very uncomfortable. She had a panic attack. She is a victim of, or a survivor, should I say, of childhood sexual abuse.
So understandably, he doesn't want to have to get pretty much naked with a man in the room.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's having that moment with me right now. Okay, so you complained to management, made this reasonable point, and you're thinking, well, obviously they're going to understand.
And we were told that due to the inclusiveness of the trust, there's nothing that they can do.
Well, you were not also told that you needed re-education.
So following that, our manager was brought into an office, or a meeting, should I say, in an office, and she was told that basically we needed to compromise, broaden our mindset, be more inclusive, and be educated.
And I understand, Lisa, that the person they thought would be good to educate you was, guess who? Rose Henderson, the man who was causing the problem in the first place. So when did you first decide to actually bring a case?
Well, I think it was around about May, June 24. This had been rumbling on since summer of 23. Nothing much had happened. We had a meeting with our HR department and we felt they just weren't taking us seriously. It was like a senior manager from HR, and she kind of was quite dismissive of our complaints. She said she didn't realise we felt the way we did, even though we'd already expressed how we felt in a letter. We'd said what our concerns were, and we'd said about inappropriate behaviour, which in my mind, when you're going to a HR manager and saying, we're worried about this man's behaviour in our changing room.
He was asking women, are you about to get changed?
Yeah.
Why aren't you changing?
So in my mind, they should have instantly removed him from that changing room and then investigated it, but they didn't.
Or found somewhere for him to go and change, but as it was, they gave you somewhere to go and change, but there were no lockers. And this is the thing a lot of people don't understand. You're nurses, you're required to wear normal clothes. You're not allowed to wear your uniform to work.
No.
And you have to change out work. You've got no choice, you have to change at work before your shift and at the end of your shift. Right. So you haven't got a choice. You have to get down to to your basics. You haven't got any choice there. So when you brought this case, and the case was for unlawful indirect discrimination and harassment, again, these things take a long time, cost a lot of money. You'd think you'd have the backing of the Royal College of Nursing. I think one of you is backed by Unison, it's your union. And it was quite the opposite of that, wasn't it, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, that was my situation. So I did contact my Unison rep. I didn't get a response. I tried phoning and I sent an email, got no response at all. And then a month or so later, I found out that rep was actually representing Rose, who had put a counter-complaint in against ours and said that he felt harassed and that we were upsetting him because of his protected characteristics.
And this was where it came. This is the issue, wasn't it, Bethany, with the HR and with all the senior management. Their thing was, but trans people are basically, you know, trans rights, human rights, all the stuff. You know, they have to be protected. And I think we in this room would all agree. I don't want someone being harassed or abused. Yeah. You know, call yourself what you. I don't care, but I don't expect me to pretend that you are anything different from what you are. But you don't have a right as a trans person to take away the rights that have been fought for by women before us. To, for instance, our right to change or go to the toilet in a place that is just single sex. The law was very clear about this, the Equality Act 2010, and the judge in your tribunal was very clear. This is the law, has always been the law, harking back to the Supreme Court ruling last spring. Again, made it very clear the law hasn't changed, it never did change. The sex is based on biological sex, but HR were just very like, we have to basically protect this trans person's rights at all costs. To hell with the rest of you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they backed him 100%. It was actually said in a meeting that they were backing Rose 100% on this, and they didn't realise or didn't understand that by doing what they did to us, it was indirect discrimination.
And so you got the lawyers in. You know you had some support. You know, and the likes of J.K. Rowling and others. How did you fund this?
Oh, so Christian Concern, they have been amazing. They've stood by us every step of the way, but obviously there are still legal fees that we need to pay for, so we are trying to raise funds to pay
crowdfunding for that. Again, you're fighting about the rest of it, because again, I think the hope, and I know the organisation Sex Matters, we do a lot with them, that you know they've crowdfunding and they're just taking, let's take on, you know, an NHS trust will take on a local council to basically force them to obey the law. This is the thing I think a lot of us find strange. I mean, even in the court system, you know, in the actual HM courts, they're still allowing trans people to use the toilets that they are legally not allowed to do under the Supreme Court ruling. Even the courts are ignoring the Supreme Court ruling. What do you make, Lisa, of the fact that the law is very clear? It's very, very simple. It was set out in the Supreme Court, nothing has changed. Nothing has ever changed. And yet you're having to spend your time, your energy, risking your jobs, let's face it, to get this same result.
It's unbelievable, really. I don't know how that they can continue to ignore the guidelines. You know, there's a lot of pussyfooting around and a lot of. I think everyone seems to be just too frightened to upset the transgender community, and you know, we don't want to upset that community. We don't want to, but. We have rights nurses, as well as women.
I don't mind who I upset, but your job is to you know, look after people and be kind to things. So you're not walking around trying to hurt people or exclude them. You just don't want your own rights trampled on, right?
Exactly. Right, yeah. Exactly.
In terms of, I mean, this is a magnificent victory. There was no sort of, oh, you know, maybe this, maybe you know that. This judge was very clear. You won hands down. Now there's going to be discussion of compensation, and although it's coming out of NHS money, I hope you take them to the sodding cleaners. I really do. I'm always in these scenarios. My view is that everyone who made the decision to fight the case should lose their job. I think that should be a really simple, because they've got to stop. It's got to stop being a free pass. But you are still under investigation by the Nursing and Midwifery Council. Am I right, Bethany? And you were reported by another male colleague. There's an awful lot of men who think this is their business, aren't there?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was a big insult, that. For a man to report women for actually raising a concern about their dignity and safety. It just completely didn't make sense to me at all.
I wonder how many of these men would be happy if it was their daughter. This is the thing, or their elderly mother. They seem to. I mean, another man who let you down, Wes Streeting, is that right, Bethany?
Yeah.
Yes, he has. I feel like it was just lip service.
What did he tell you when you met with him?
He said he supports us and
asked us to, like, with our union, to write out a new policy for trans
and we
for
gave that to
which
him.
we did.
Yeah, and we haven't.
Because I always rather liked Wes Streeting, but he did work for Stonewall.
Yeah.
And, and I think, maybe this is just it's too much. And this thing, there shouldn't be a battle between people who believe they are trans, want to live as if they're another woman, they're another gender. Again, as J.K. Rowling said, go to bed with whoever will have you. Do wear what you want, do what you want, call yourself what you want. But there shouldn't be a battle between that and women's rights. It's because where rights collide, I mean, there's a reason why women wanted to have separate spaces from men, isn't there, Lisa?
Exactly, of course there is. I mean, our friend Karen is proof of that, but it's not just that. I think every woman feels differently about undressing in front of men. I've got friends who aren't even comfortable getting undressed in front of their own husbands, never mind some stranger. It's not fair to say, well, these women aren't bothered, so you're the ones that are the problem.
Recent tribunal, there's another one, has suggested that it's legal and fine until a woman complains. So you're putting or until perhaps a girl at a school complains about this. This wasn't the deal. I mean, again, all normal men, I'm not saying trans people, I'm saying but all normal, because I know plenty of trans people who absolutely don't agree with women's faces being encroached on. But normal people, right-thinking people, men included, understand why women want those spaces. And whether it's in a pub toilet, a school toilet, or a hospital changing rooms, they understand it. Why do you think this has become such a big battle between, again, women just going about their daily business and trans activism?
We think it's Stonewall. The power of Stonewall sort of started all this off. It was accept everyone without exception, whether they look passing or not. It's basically, you just have to shut up and put up, women.
Would it be okay if this man, Rose Henderson, looked like a woman?
No.
Why not?
Because he's a biological male.
And is it how it makes you feel, or is it the threat? Because we've often been told by trans activists, the threat to trans people in male or trans identified men, i.e. trans women, in toilets, in male toilets, is great because men are a threat to them. Because you sort of go, but that's why we didn't want you in our toilets.
Yeah, that's it, exactly.
So it doesn't. Yeah, that's the end of the matter as far as and that is the law.
It is the law, and organisations like the NHS and across the public sector need to obey the law.
And what would you say to other women in this situation? Because undoubtedly there'll be other nurses, there'll be other people in other jobs where they have to get changed, there'll be other, girls at school, young women at university, wherever, where there are no single-sex spaces for them, or there are ostensibly single-sex spaces, but a man is allowed in them if he puts on a dress and calls himself by a woman's name. What would you say to them, Lisa?
We would say be brave, stand up and say that you are not happy, and if you get shut down, take it further, seek advice. You don't have to shut up and put up.
Not everybody stood by. I mean, you said there were dozens of women, 28 in total. I think 8 of you decided to bring a case. I think one dropped out through ill health. But there was a lot of people would have thought, a lot of the women would have thought, I just don't want the hassle. I don't want to risk losing my job. Is it worth risking losing your job for, Bethany?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
I have a daughter. As a mother, I have to protect my daughter.
I think there are 9 daughters between all of you.
9.
Yeah, that's what I feel. I've got a daughter.
But and so this is the right thing to do. And for colleagues like Karen Danson, who survived sexual abuse, for our international colleagues who don't want to get changed or can't culturally get changed in front of a man.
We did have ones wearing vests and leggings underneath their uniforms because they didn't want to be naked. In the changing room, so they were just sweating throughout the summer.
It's so basic. We've still got politicians justifying having men who've been convicted of rape being allowed into women's prisons. We had John Swinney from the SNP. I mean, again, I don't think this is a party political point. This is. I mean, it's immoral. It's immoral, isn't it?
It is immoral.
Yeah. Why do you think there's a problem? Is it, because again, I think there's an awful lot of female ministers. I mean, Bridget Phillipson is the Equalities Minister as well as the Education Secretary. She's been sitting on this vice from the Equalities and Human Rights Commission for months now, basically saying, there's the law, it's the Equality Act 2010 hasn't changed. Supreme Court clarified that. This is the advice to all organisations, private businesses, charities, schools, everybody. Single-sex spaces are only open to the biological sex of the person, who they're designated for. End of, nothing to discuss. And she's sitting on that advice. What would you say to her?
I would say stop dragging your feet. This is not a complex issue. You need to roll out the guidance immediately.
What would you say, Jen?
Well, she keeps saying it's about getting it right, but it's already right. It's clear.
The law is already right, and it always was.
What is there to get right? I don't understand.
The thing is, these cases, they're not going away. There's more and more. There's also the case of the Christian nurse, Jennifer Mele. She could face the sack tomorrow for speaking to the media, even though actually the judge in your case has said it was your right to have spoken to the media. She faced the sack because by the NHS speaking to the media, she was basically punished for indirectly referring to a male sex offender, a convicted paedophile who'd been brought into her hospital. He identifies as a woman, apparently. A very high rate of men who are sex offenders who identify apparently as women. I wonder how convenient that is behind bars. But he's convicted paedophile. His medical treatment that she was discussing, which he overheard, was very specific to him being a man because it was about inserting a catheter into his penis. And I don't know, we do a weekly check on this show because Keir Starmer thinks that 0.1% of women have a penis. Have you done your weekly check when have you grown a penis yet?
No, nothing down
Hold
there.
on a minute. No, still haven't got one. But there we are. But this paedophile prisoner did absolutely have one. I mean, we laugh about it, but genuinely, this is what the Prime Minister claims to think. But she referred to him as Mr. She wasn't being rude to him. She wasn't trying. She was literally discussing his treatment and then told him, I can't refer to you as a woman because that would be against my religion. It's the only reason she said that. She was utterly polite to him, despite the fact he launched a torrent of abuse to her, including calling her the N-word at least 3 times. What do you make of that case, Lisa, first?
Well, I think it's absolutely appalling. I mean, it's just yet again, trans rights seem to trump religion. Your sex-based rights, it seems to trump everything. And why should it? We all have our rights to be respected. Why should her religion not be respected? Just because she didn't want to go along with calling him her.
Yeah,
it's wrong.
And we've had that in court cases, haven't we, Bethany, where women have had to refer to the man who sexually assaulted them as she, her penis and things. What's your message to people listening to this, in terms of these battles? Because a lot of people say, people have written books recently, woke is dead. Why have we still got court cases like this? Why is she facing the sack tomorrow if woke is dead?
I think we've won our battle, but it's part of a bigger war, and I think the tide is starting to turn.
And I don't think it was a war you were planning to fight. You were just getting on with your jobs and your lives and the kids. And
So I think things are starting to change, but I think it's like people like ourselves and Sandy, Peggy, and Jennifer all fighting for our rights, and hopefully more women will carry on standing up for themselves, and eventually someone will sit up and listen and say, oh, actually they have a point. And
like a Supreme Court judge. I mean, I don't think the trans activists knew what they were taking on when they dealing with women like you. I do think, no, genuinely, I wouldn't mess with them. No, but that's the thing, it's women like you who are actually on the front line fighting the battles, and people talk about this like being, some celebs get cancelled for misgendering. It's not. It's about ordinary women just protecting theirs and their daughters and their colleagues' rights to just basically have a right to your basic dignity and the rights that our mothers and grandmothers fought for a reason, and which every sensible, right-thinking, sane person in this country knows is right, but they're too afraid to stand up and speak up, and you weren't too afraid, and I'm in awe of you both and all of your fantastic colleagues who did the same. You are an absolute inspiration, and I know my audience will be applauding you at home as I am now.
Thank you.
Lisa Lockey, Bethany Hutchinson, Darlington Nurses, absolute heroines. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Your calls, your response to that in just a few moments. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 12:25 is the time. Benjamin Butterworth has hot-footed it back into the studio. You're a bit woke, aren't you? You're a bit transactivisy. A journalist and broadcaster, Benjamin Butterworth. How can anyone not be on the side of those two and their colleague, magnificent women?
Well, you're right. Piers Morgan called me the wokest man in Britain, and I said, that's very offensive. Please don't assume my gender.
They're in the right, though, those Darlington nurses.
Well, look, I think where you measure this, you're giving me looks.
This is a yes or a no.
It's not.
This is why my audience shout at you when you're on the radio.
Look, I don't know what this person looks like, and if they clearly...
No, I do. I've seen a picture of him. He's clearly a man. Because he is a man.
If they haven't had an operation, if they don't present as a woman, if they don't behave in that way...
What's behaving as a woman? Do I behave as a woman?
Well, looking like a woman is what I'm referring to.
They said it wouldn't make a difference. He was a man.
And I disagree. So if they've fully operated on and they've had a recognition certificate which legally changes what their sex is...
You can have a recognition certificate without having had an operation or even a single drug.
You can. Well, I don't know if you can...
Hang on.
You have to go through a 2-year process at least.
No.
And there are lots of assessments.
You can. No, gender recognition certificates, you don't even have to have taken a hormone blocker.
And it is... that is not how it works normally. And it's completely wrong to say that someone who is fully operated on, has had gender reassignment surgery, looks to everybody else as though they're a woman.
They don't ever look like
But that's complete nonsense. That's offensive nonsense.
What's offensive about it?
To say that you're talking about people you don't know, to say that they can never look like the gender they assign.
I've seen enough pictures of men who say that they think they're women, and I can always tell they're men.
But you can't. I mean, just the other day...
I hate to tell you, women have got a good instinct about this, biologically, for a very good reason.
Well, I mean, look, you're wrong. So, for example, there was a woman called April Ashley who had a gender reassignment surgery in the 1950s.
There was a man or a woman?
Well, they were
Is he a man or a woman?
They were born male.
So he's a man?
They're now deceased.
So he's a man?
But they lived and had an operation for 60 years, their entire adult life almost. Now, are you telling me that late woman in her 80s should have been sent into the men's loos and that would keep her safe?
I'm very happy for there to be a cubicle that's just used by people who are confused about their identity. That's fine, but you don't take the women's loos.
Separate but not equal. Is that what you really think?
No, that's perfectly equal. It's just you don't get to be... The reason why women don't want men in their toilets because men are a threat to women in their toilet. We don't know which man is a threat. You can't tell because men who are sex offenders don't have "I'm a sex offender" written on their forehead. Funnily enough,
I'm sure you don't need telling. Men who are sex offenders transgenders don't need to pretend to be a woman. You know, Wayne Couzens put on a police uniform, not a dress.
Yeah, but he wasn't it. Yeah, but there are places where we are more vulnerable than others, and one of them is when we're changing down to our bra and knickers, or when we're in a cubicle in a toilet.
And so, for that reason, why don't you understand?
Can I just say, another sodding man telling women about when we're safe and when we're not. We'll sodding well tell you when we're safe. Thank you very bloody much.
Well, first of all, there are as many trans women as trans men. It goes in both directions. And you are not caring about those very vulnerable, tiny minority of people.
No, I don't actually. I care about women's rights.
Well, you said the quiet bit out loud, I think.
No, I didn't say the quiet bit out loud. I've been very clear about this. Because trans rights don't trump women's rights. Trans people have got the same. I'm very happy if they want to use the disabled bob, if it says disabled.
But they're not disabled.
No. If it says disabled and people confused about their gender identity, I don't care what it says. They can use whatever lose they want. They don't get to use my lose if they're born a man and they've got a penis. That full stop.
I mean, I think this is condescending, and also probably it's also probably illegal because it may well it would out those people as being transgender in public by going to those toilets.
There
are plenty of trans people who look like the gender they identify.
They really aren't.
They are not safe by going into a men's toilet.
A, there aren't plenty of trans people, and B, there aren't very many who look like they're actually the gender they claim to be, which they aren't, because biologically, under the law, Supreme Court made that very clear, they are not that sex. End of. Nothing to discuss.
Well, the law says otherwise, in fact, because these people have legally changed their sex. If you have a gender recognition certificate,
I can have a piece of paper saying I'm a tortoise. It doesn't make me a sodding tortoise.
But you know full well that that isn't the same case. Why do you think trans people exist in every culture, in every society, in every piece of history?
Can I get a piece? No, people who think that they're born in the wrong. That's not trans people. They're people who think they're born in the wrong.
Who are you to tell them how they know their lives?
You're to tell me whether I'm safe in a toilet or not.
I'm not lecturing on women. I'm lecturing on transgender people standing up.
Can I get a piece of paper saying that I'm a black woman?
No, of course you can't.
That would be crazy. Being a black woman or being a white woman, there's less difference there than being a woman or being a man. But one of them is offensive and one of them is progressive.
Except that the centre of what you're saying is to assume that these people are somehow inventing it, that it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist that you can identify as having a broken leg.
They're not born in the wrong body.
Yes, they are. It does exist.
Not.
That's why you have people that will describe this.
They may legitimately, honestly believe they're born in the wrong body, for which I have. It's body dysmorphia. We used to treat it as that. I've absolute sympathy. I want them to live their happiest life.
They don't want sympathy. They want their rights,
empathy.
and they want
their
equality,
right is that they can use the toilet that they are designated by birth.
Look, the fact is that there are plenty of people who look like the gender they identify as, who are fully operated on, and
they really aren't. You named one.
The idea. Well, I mean, I could name more if you wanted. There's a Garnier model called Paris.
Paris. No. Paris does not. Paris is clearly a man.
No, absolutely not. And the truth is that when these people have been fully operated on, fully legally changed their sex,
the vast majority of men who pretend that they are women do not have any. They've had no treatment whatsoever, and they are quite clearly fully intact males, as this man Rose Henderson was.
Well, I'm aware you only have half an hour left, and you probably.
I could do this for the next half an hour, mate, and I'd still be right the whole time.
Well, you'd still be wrong. I don't think we're going to persuade each other.
No, but I just find it extraordinary. A man can go, I've got a piece of paper saying I'm a woman, changing every aspect about their life, their body, but the pigmentation in your skin. I can't say to you, I identify as a black woman, because that's outrageous. Would you see how absurd and outrageous it is for a man to say, I'm a woman now?
What is absurd is for you to tell people who know themselves better than clearly you do.
I know myself to be a black woman, Benjamin. How dare you tell me I'm not? How dare you tell me I'm not a black woman? I'm a black woman. If I believe I'm a black woman, then I'm a black woman.
Frankly, it would have no consequence on me whether you thought you were a black woman or not.
I'm pretty sure a lot of black people would be peeved for me to be claiming I've been oppressed all my life because I'm a black woman. You'd think that was outrageous, wouldn't you? And quite rightly.
I think denying the ability of tax-paying, decent, law-abiding people to go about their lives based on their gender identity, which is what transgender people face,
law-abiding nurses, like the Darlington nurses, who just want to be able to change without a man standing there in his boxer shorts, calling himself Rose and saying, "You getting changed yet?" in front of them.
You're saying that an 80-year-old woman who transitioned 60 years ago should be marched into the men's loos, and as if that would be normal or safe or reasonable. It would not.
Why would it not be safe for her to be her, she, he, him to be in the men's toilets?
Because that nobody would think that an old woman is a man and was born male. And they don't have male parts.
Is this trans person you're talking about a greater or less threat than the women who are in their bra and knickers in the changing room at their hospital when a man stands there in his boxer shorts?
A trans person is at greater risk. We know that they are targeted.
There's no evidence.
For
Again, there's no evidence for that.
Is.
That's one of the absolutely debunked nonsense things that has been claimed. Absolute nonsense. I mean, honestly. Anyone want to come in and have a say? Give us a call. 0344
Maybe let transgender people call in, see if they agree with you.
They can call in. I've invited
so.
plenty of. We've had trans guests. I've interviewed many trans guests. Lots of the trans activists don't come on. They know why they don't come on because they're going to lose the debate. Let's talk to Nick, who is in London. He wants to get in touch about the Darlington nurses. Nick, back me up, please, love.
Oh, children, calm down. I was enjoying that row. Also thought to Julia, black people would be appalled as you coming out as black, because good grief, Julia Hartley-Brewer is bad enough in this country without having you.
What do you make of those wonderful nurses?
Well, I don't get, and it isn't just the Darlington nurses or Fife. It's that people in power, authority in this country, appear never, ever, ever to be held accountable for the stupidities, incompetences, recklessnesses, carelessnesses, dangerous or downright fraudulent. I mean, last week it's Craig Guilford,
yeah,
and he's allowed to swan off with a bloody great pension, pardon the language, and no wonder we are run so poorly, because people are in ivory towers and gold-plated ivory towers and are never, ever, ever, as I say, held liable or accountable.
Couldn't agree with you more. Nick, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Let's go to another quick call. I have to keep this brief. But Raymond is in Shropshire. Raymond, you want to come back to what Robert Jenrick was saying to me a bit earlier on the show?
Good morning, yes.
Good morning. Afternoon.
You're talking to an 81-year-old man here, and that's a man, and I'm a white man.
I can tell you were, funnily enough.
Amazing, isn't it? I'm a white man, but I'm slightly overweight. But if I was a black man and somebody said, "Oh, you're a fat black man or a fat white man," I could call being racist. But hey ho, I want less government in the country. Basically, less government and more common sense, which is what you're basically speaking to that gentleman about trans women and trans men and trans this. We just despair. We get to our age that I am, and I think, what is happening?
Yeah.
Father, grandfather, and all that other rubbish. We are there for family and for sensible government, and we don't need it. Don't need too much government. And common sense from you, Julia, is what we want. And I could go on and on about my list of proposals, but I'm keeping it brief as a result of the...
we're running a bit late. Raymond, we'll have to leave there. Call in again. I'd love to hear more from you, Raymond in Shropshire. Thank you for that. 12:35 is the time. I've also got to go to a break because I've got a head teacher on next talking about all these calls for a social media ban for under 16. Though, interestingly, one of the big campaigners on safety online, Molly Russell's dad, his daughter, of course, took her life after what she'd seen on social media. He says actually a social media ban for those kids would be wrong. It would send them onto the dark web. There would be even fewer protections. We're going to talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome. Good afternoon, where am I like? That's because we've been round with Benjamin. That's why we have him on. 12:37 is the time. It's very much afternoon. Let's not keep her waiting any longer. A head teacher is joining us, Christine Cunniff. She's head teacher, LVS Ascot. It's a co-educational independent day and boarding school in Berkshire to talk about all this talk about a social media ban for under 16-year-olds. Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you and good afternoon, and I enjoyed your debate. I'm privileged to be hearing it.
Well, can I ask, co-educational school, what's the toilet situation, the changing room situation for the girls and boys at your school?
It hasn't changed at all.
As in, it hasn't changed from when it was just sensible and it was for boys and for girls?
Yeah, and of course there will be challenges along the way, and when that happens then we'll deal with it, but at the moment it's not an issue.
Good. Good to hear that. Good to hear that. In terms of your policy at your school when it comes to access to phones, smartphones in particular, or social media, do you have a policy that you impose during the school day and indeed for pupils who are boarding? I mean, it's unusual. Most of us go to comps. We don't go to private schools or certainly boarding schools. But do you have a policy at the school, and how strict is it?
Yeah, so we have a no phones during the school day. So the schools are actually put in what we call yonder pouches, which are pouches that are magnetically sealed during the day, so the children can't use them. And then when they leave in the evening, then they can be released. And that's because we have children that travel a long way, and I do accept that children need to have the communication for their own safety. But there is a very strict policy, and if children try and access through a second phone, for example, they're sent home.
Simple as that. It's a clear breach. And when you instigated that policy, had there been a bit more of a free for all before then, and did things change? Were kids happier? Would they concentrate more? Did their schoolwork improve?
Yeah, we try to embrace it. We have to look at everything that comes our way, embrace it, see what happens. But we found as soon as we locked them away during the school day, the children were actually talking to each other more. Yeah. You see at the break time now they're playing like young children should be playing. And there's a time and place for mobile devices, and it should be limited. And I know we're going to probably be coming on to that in a minute.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Well, there's two different issues. They're being debated pretty much alongside each other, but I think they are separate. One is access to phones, the other is social media. But it's fascinating. The doctors and medical experts, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. So these are all the male, all the colleges together, Royal Colleges. These are the top experts. They have warned of the growing evidence of health harms from tech and devices on children and young people. They said frontline clinicians have given personal testimony about, but they say horrific cases they've treated across every speciality, and in terms of unrestricted content, unrestricted screen time for children and young people, the impact of them on not just their mental health but their physical health as well, and especially also their exposure to harmful content online. But linking to that, a lot of talk in Britain about following what the Australians have done already, which is bringing this ban on phones for under 16s, but also now talk about this under 16 social media specific ban. What do you make of all of that debate?
Well, there's a lot there to unpack. The first one is about young children and devices, and I must admit, I've got children in my 20s now, so I'm really glad that I've lived that part and don't have to cope with this now. But the amount of families I see when I'm in supermarkets and their young children as young as toddlers have got iPads.
Oh, I know.
It seems a really easy way to keep children quiet. Now, that's wrong. And the amount of phones and devices at the dinner table, and also children and parents should be playing together, getting outside together, doing activities together. There's a time and place for devices, and it's not at a very early age. The second thing about social media is I really would worry if there was a blanket ban on social media under the age of 16, because children are very savvy. It's like water, they will find a way. And they will find a darker way to do it. Like we know across the world, when you ban something, it goes underground. Yeah. So I'm very much for the accountability of the tech providers. That's where the liability, the responsibility and accountability lies as well. And if we ban it, we're taking that away. So they need to be held to account. And it could be a halfway house. So for example, for children under the age of 16, maybe less algorithm-driven content, maybe a limit on the content, but it's part of education to be able to look at this and educate children to use it safely as well.
That's it. You can't just have them suddenly going, it's 16 or 18, and now I'm allowed to use this. They won't have any experience.
It's like anything. You tell under 16 they can't do this, this, and this. What are they going to do? Day one after 16, they're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's about education, about the softy approach, and holding the tech companies to account. Because we've got these online safety bills, we've got all these promises, and we're not seeing anybody being held to account.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to do.
Well, that's it. I always think this can't be beyond the wit of man. It's like the battles we had over, you know, the government versus Elon Musk and X over the grok, stripping women down and, you know, creating images in a bikini. It happened to me over Christmas period. Someone asked, you think, well, you know, A, let's check your hard drive, mate. But B, you know, it can't be beyond the wit of these companies that, as high tech savvy as they are, and their willingness to, you know, ability to use their algorithms to drive, you know, a child looking at anorexia sites to more anorexia sites or suicide sites. If they can do that, they can absolutely drive them the other way. But they can also say to people, yeah, you can't do that. We literally won't let you do that. They're able to do it. Do you think there needs to be more pressure on them to do that? Because it sounds to me like you are very much echoing what Ian Russell, the father of Molly Russell, who took her own life after viewing suicide and self-harm content online. And he said, you know, you'd have thought he was someone who's very much into there being more controls online. But he said that banning under 16s from social media would be wrong, again, because they will go to places that, you know, parents will have no idea where they are, teachers will have no idea where they are, and they are going to see a heck of a lot worse.
It's a really dangerous playing ground, this one, and we as adults have got to guide children openly, transparently, and educate them. And as adults, we've also got to learn about the dangers too, because I think, you know, some adults probably don't know what those dangers are. Some do and put their head in the sand, think it's not going to happen to their family.
Some don't bother. I mean, lots of time I look at, you know, go into a restaurant or a cafe or something, and you get parents, they arrive, and they literally, you know, they're all like this with their phones. I mean, you know, mum and dad, the reason, you know, the kids are on their phones, the kids would really love it if their parents bothered to talk to them occasionally. The parents are often the worst offenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, at least have those conversations and say, look, this was in the news. It's really disturbing. We need to talk about this. And, you know, and contact schools as well, because we've got online safety platforms and we have discussions. But nationally, I bet if you were to ask many head teachers, there's not much engagement in online safety programs that the schools have. And I know a lot of information goes home to parents, but it's so important. I think in our list of dangers in this day and age, this is right at the top of the tree, and this is something that everybody should be paying attention to.
And it is fascinating, as always, when parents, and I know when my daughter was at primary school, talking about stranger danger. I was, you know, a man at the end of the school gates. I was always more worried about crossing the road safely, not, you know, with the phone, but also what's happening online. It's amazing how many people, you know, if a man turned up at your door at 10 o'clock at night and said, can I come and speak to your 13-year-old daughter, please? You go, don't bloody well think so. But you're quite happy for him to pose as a 14-year-old girl on the social media and talk to your daughter all night. I mean, you know, most parents, as you say, have got their head in the sand about what's really going on.
But it's not, but also adults are also being duped themselves.
Yeah.
You know, online scams, you know, the way AI is used now to fool people. Well, so, you know, adults are equally vulnerable, but the children are in our care and they're looking to us for safety, and that's what we've got to put at the top of the tree.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Christine Cunningham, head teacher of LVS at Ascot, an independent school in Berkshire. Benjamin, I mean, it's really interesting to, you know, no nonsense head there. But this is the thing, most parents do have their heads in the sand, I think, and I think a lot of parents, and I understand that, you know, you're on a long flight or you're on a long journey on holiday in the car, have an iPad, let's all have a break. But basically, from the age of about, frankly, I've seen babies about 1 year old having, you know, holding their mum's mobile. I'm sorry, that's just bad parenting. We've got to start talking about this. But the social media, kids are being left to their own, quite literally to their own devices on social media. And there's bullying, there's all the girls doing the weird pouting and the, you know, here's a picture of my boobs to the boys who demand them. I mean, the stuff that they are seeing, the stuff that they are doing themselves, it's just unhealthy. Yeah,
the dangers, I think, are massively underestimated, even though they're so obvious at this stage. The only point I disagreed with the head teacher on was she suggested, well, if you give them access at the 16th birthday, they'll gorge on it like someone does when they get access to vodka. Well, actually, I think you probably won't have the addiction to social media if you've never been on it in the first place. And isn't that part of the goal?
I think my thing is, I think they'll get on it anyway, in the same way that, I don't know about you, I had my first drink before the age of 18. I was working in a nightclub at 16, for the love of God. I'm pretty sure I had a drink when I was there.
Well, so I think that I'm on the fence about it. I think probably instinctively we will reflect on giving 13-year-olds social media like we reflect on our grandparents smoking, at 12 years old.
Yeah, in the car with the kids.
Exactly, yeah. Except I think we should look to Australia and see whether it works, because if there are backdoors, if it doesn't really illustrate, prove the problem, we'll see in Australia.
And it doesn't have to work completely, in the same way that people will drink and smoke and do drugs, even though there are laws against them and age limits. People will break the law. The point is, can you protect as many children as possible? But I've also got that added balance, which is if children have to be ID'd for their age, by definition, so will adults. And at that point, you're then taking away a lot of independence and freedom and privacy for adults. So it's such a difficult balance. Again, I know what Tony Blair would say the solution was: all together now. It's ID cards.
Oh, I agree.
Digital ID card. Yeah, I haven't got time to do that right now. Another day. 12:48 is the time. Before we go to a break there, it's time to find out how you could be with a chance of winning a trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay at a 4-star Intercontinental Hotel, and £2,500 spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen to find out how you can enter.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
You do not want to miss out on that trip of a lifetime. Good luck. 12:48 is the time. Let's get a quick break and we'll be back with you in just a moment. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. At 12:50 is the time. Benjamin Butterworth still here, being metaphorically slapped for his ridiculous views. That's why we have you on, just to keep me on middays. But lots of you have been getting in touch about our conversation in the wake of those amazing Darlington nurses standing up for women's rights against a man who wants to watch them get undressed. Let's call it what it is. Right now, let's talk about another just extraordinary set of stories involving Iran and these extraordinary numbers. We've seen a report suggesting that 16,500 people people, mostly under 30, were killed under what has been called the genocide under digital darkness. I do wish people wouldn't use the word genocide when it's not actually genocide, but certainly the Iranian leaders turning off the internet, turning off all contact with the outside world as much as they could, to then basically slaughter their own people on the streets, has really, really shaken an awful lot of people. Let's talk about this with Dr. Dan Diker. He's president of the Jerusalem Centre for Security and Foreign Affairs and joins us. Good afternoon to you, Dan. Dan.
Good afternoon to you, Julia.
Good afternoon. Look, I mean, the world has been, watching, certainly all last week, what was going on in Iran, as much as we could, with videos coming out often, 24, even 48 hours later. And the world is watching, and it's been fascinating, again, how quiet many mainstream media, certainly in Britain, were before they were basically forced to talk about it by social media, particularly by commentary on X, but also just how many of the great and the good who care so much about human rights, the Greta Thunbergs and others, very quiet when it came to Iranian young people being slaughtered on the streets trying to have their human rights. What do you make of the numbers and where we are right now in Iran?
Well, Julia, thank you for raising this critically important issue, the hypocrisy of the international human rights discourse regarding the wholesale slaughter of women, children, men, innocent protesters across Iran. And I am sorry and I regret to inform that the numbers are far higher than those than are being reported. Yeah. Even the 16,500 number, we at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, we broadcast in Persian to the Iranian people. We have intelligence experts on Iran. The numbers that we are receiving are in excess of 30,000 people slaughtered across 40 districts and over 140 cities across the Islamic Republic.
Well, that 16,000 figure was basically from a number of hospitals confirmed body bags. It didn't cover the entire country, and as we know, these protests have been pretty much across the entire country. So that those figures would make more sense. And of course, we're talking about many tens of thousands more injured, and of course, many also being held in prison right now, and realistically facing torture, possibly even, depending on when Donald Trump loses interest, execution.
Yeah, well, many are facing execution right now, and in fact, we must understand and help our viewers underscore and remember the fact that we are dealing with a genocidal, I mean, they are genocidal in their intent, and they are a jihadistic, messianic regime that has made no secret of its goals since they kidnapped 53 Americans in 1979 upon the return of Grand Ayatollah Khomeini's plane ride from France, from Paris, in which he said the United States is the big Satan, Great Britain is the middle Satan, and Israel is the small Satan, and it has targeted all three of these countries for extinction. Much easier to target Israel, which is one of the smallest countries in the Middle East, facing one of the largest 8-front assaults on its very existence as the nation state of the Jewish people. But we do know that in the streets of Iran, across the country, are cries by name for President Trump to save the Iranian people. And they are also, Julia, calling for none other than what they call Javad Pahlavi, which is the son of the Shah, the son of the, and this is the great irony in all of this, is that the RP2, Reza Pahlavi Jr.'s dad, the Shah, who was universally disliked and rejected for his very strong and harsh measures by the Savak, the former, security services. That's what brought down that regime. And next thing we know, we have a murderous, extremist, messianic Islamic regime, that has really cost Iran its economy, its youth, its future, everything. It has absolutely become intolerable. and the silence of most of the Western world is deafening.
And again,
except for President Trump.
Well, and President Trump saying he would help and warning, and again, we're told that the executions that had been planned were called off because of these threats. But realistically, what would he do? We've had those, the missile strikes. We know Israel's repeatedly had to defend itself. And it has to be very brief. I'm so sorry. What could America do to help these protests and help these people rid themselves of the mullahs?
Well, what America has already done, which is why there are 2 million people across Iran in the streets continuing to fight despite the mass slaughter. This is what's different than past 2008, 2017, 2022, Masa Amini, the hijab protest. What's different about this protest is that they are drawing tremendous strength from President Trump's attack on Iran's ballistic and nuclear program in June 2025 with Israel. His arrest and his arrest of Maduro of Venezuela, which is Iran's base in Latin America. The fact that Israel has amputated the Iranian regime's tentacles in Lebanon, Hezbollah, in Gaza, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, in Iraq, the Iranian special forces. Yep. The Iranian regime is frightened to its britches, and they know that President Trump has taken action which no other American president has taken in modern American history. So they draw tremendous.
Oh, well, our line's just going fine. I was going to have to draw it to a close. The line just went the last moment. Dr. Dan Duckett, I so appreciate you joining us, President of the Jerusalem Centre for Security and Foreign Affairs. Again, just don't want to leave that story behind while it's still happening. Benjamin Butterworth, should the West do more?
Yes. The Ayatollah is nothing more than Adolf Hitler in a tunic, and we are dangerously naive to the threat, both to the Middle East, but even on our own soil.
And again, it's one of those stories, people, oh, it's something that's happening over there. No, virtually all the terror attacks we've had on our territory are ultimately being funded by the Iranians. People need to realise how joined up our thinking is on this. Talking of joined up thinking, Ian Collins is here.
Well, I'll try and avoid that if I can, frankly.
What's happening in Because there's quite a lot about again.
There's quite a lot about. It's all happening.
January.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum, of course, Davos.
Which is where, of course, Keir Starmer would rather have been than in Westminster this morning. And indeed, so would we.
Yeah, well, indeed. Anywhere but here, frankly. Nigel Farage is there, of course, which is interesting in itself. Trump is there later in the week. Have we got anything to fear?
But don't you love the fact that Starmer wasn't going to go, but he did go the year that no one went, and now he's not going. He's going to go.
I think he was there on his